If it's cold, if I'm cold, it's cold. I run hot. So.
Andy and Jen, can you confirm that you can hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. We are recording.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the October meeting of the Mental Health San Francisco Implementation Working Group. I am now calling the meeting to order, and please note that this meeting is being recorded on WebEx. The recording is available on the Mental Health SF website. So let's do everybody consents to being recorded. We're going to start with the land acknowledgement. Would anybody like to read the land acknowledgement?
San Francisco Department of Public Health staff acknowledges that we are on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As the indigenous stewards of this land, in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone community and by affirming their sovereign rights as the First Peoples.
Thank you very much, Steve. And Diana, you'll call roll call?
Yes, I am going to call roll now. To establish quorum, when your name is called, please respond with who or present or something along those lines. Joining us on video, Steve Fields. Are you here?
I am present.
Yay. Member Gonzalez.
Yep, here.
Member Hammer.
Here.
Member Lipton.
Here.
Member McGuigan.
Here.
Member Patterson emailed to say that he was sick, so Member Patterson is absent. Member Salinas.
Here.
Member Short, we do not see yet. Member Wong.
Here.
So we have 7 out of 9 members present. So we have a quorum to continue. And then going to the next slide to excuse the absent members. I'm not sure if we want to do this now or wait till maybe Sarah comes or do it. And I don't know how that works if we're still waiting for maybe.
I suggest we defer and move on.
That sounds fine.
Okay.
So let's go to meeting goals. And Dan, if you could just remind us to come back
Yeah.
to the excused
Yeah,
members.
Jen and Kaylee, if we do not, can you remind us to come back to the excusing part if we don't remember? Yes. Thank you.
So today we have the following goals. 1, to discuss the plan for community engagement. 2, feedback on plan for our progress report. 3, discuss the IWG meeting optimization ideas. And 4, an update on behavioral health services and the by director.
And just noting that depending on how the agenda goes, we may need to cut something short or squish something. So we'll see how timing goes.
We'll have the following presenters today: Deborah O from Interethnica and Ashley Bond from DTA Communications, who's the DCH Behavioral Health Communications Manager. We'll talk about our community engagement plans. Dr. Cunnins will then give an update on mental health in San Francisco. And can I just ask you, Diana, when you just mentioned about the agenda and the time that we have for everything, I have on my calendar that we're supposed to go till 1 today, but I thought it was noon.
The meetings are technically scheduled from 9 to 1. We agreed before my time that we would try to always have them be 3 hours. And so that's what we plan agenda for, just 3 hours.
So, okay.
But we have this room till 1.
Okay.
All of that.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. So we're now moving to discussion item number 1, the approval of the September 2023 IWG meeting minutes, which are posted on the IWG website. Are there any changes to the minutes as posted on the website?
Before we take a motion, I asked Jan the other day whether the resolution adopted at the prior meeting, as well as the resolution adopted, I think, several meetings back had been distributed to the Board of Supervisors, the mayor, and other organizations that we asked that they be distributed
Do you
to.
mean the SCRT? Which one are you talking? The SCRT resolution?
There were two resolutions.
Yeah.
One was a resolution related to the department that the IWG be notified of certain, I think we decided not to use the word material, but substantial events that we should have notice of. And the second one was the SCRT resolution, which we adopted at the last meeting.
Yes, and Ashley, I don't know if you have any, like Valerie is not here today due to some previous engagements, but she did confirm that it was circulated, and I don't know, Ashley, if there are details about anything about the details of that you know of, or we can communicate that after the meeting if you would like some additional details of who and how.
I think we should communicate it after the meeting. I don't have an update from Valerie, unfortunately.
I'm fine if someone wants to do an email to the IWG members just to confirm what's been done or what's not been done.
Okay.
I just didn't want to have it get lost.
Sure, yeah.
I thought you were, remember Lipton, I thought you were going to ask about the changes to the minutes.
No, I have no changes to the minutes, but I wanted to,
Okay,
but since the minutes included the adoption of the resolution,
okay,
that's why I brought it.
okay. So next, okay, great. So, no changes that I'm hearing to the minutes. So let's,
Well, and could I interrupt? It's just, I did want to circle back to, there was some question about the format of the meetings. And we had some back and forth with like what this body is, what the minutes should look like, make sure we confirm that with the good governance guide and others. You know, we've heard that there's both been too much detail in the minutes for some and others really prefer and like that amount of detail. So in the last couple of months, we've been working to make those minutes more summative and easier to read while still keeping some of the detail that people are looking for. So we're looking kind of for that happy medium, that kind of right level of information so that you have enough to refresh your memories and track things, but not too much. So we did check with the good governance guide. Valerie went through and made sure that all of that is okay. And what we found is, like, you can see that, you know, we have some flexibility with the level of notes. And I just wanted to check in before you vote on the minutes, is if the minutes are meeting the needs of the members, both those who would like the detail and those who would like maybe a little bit more succinct. Are there any feedback or concerns about the format of the meeting minutes?
it looked fine to me.
Who raised the issue of having more succinct minutes, but I'm fine with how we're proceeding.
Okay. Any other comments?
Nope.
Any scope?
Okay,
we're good.
thank you for that. And thank you very much for Kaylee, who's been working on hitting this happy medium. She's put a lot of work into it. So we really appreciate the care that she's taken.
Thanks, Jen.
Kaylee, and thanks, Jen, for recentering us on that question. So I think, Diana, we're ready for public comment.
Next slide, please, Karen. So if there are members of the public who wish to provide comment on the approval of the September meeting minutes, I'll first call the people who are joining us by video, and then anybody who's here in person. I actually don't see any members of the public here in person. And everybody will have 2 minutes, and I will alert you when your time is nearing the end. So if you'd like to join, if you'd like to publicly comment, please raise your virtual hand. I'm going to refresh. I don't see any raised hands. Kaylee or Jen, can you confirm that you also do not see any?
I do not see any either.
I think we can close public comment for the meeting minutes.
All right, so we are now going to vote to approve the September 2023 meeting minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thank you. That was Lipton and McGuigan. And then Diana, you can now call.
Yes. So yes means that you approve the September meeting minutes, and no means that you do not. So joining us online, Member Fields,
Yes.
Member Gonzalez.
Yes.
Member Hammer,
Yes.
Member Lipton,
Yes.
Member McGuigan,
Yes.
Member Salinas,
Yes.
Member Wong.
Yes.
It passes. The majority votes to approve the September 2023 meeting minutes, passing it back to you, Chair.
Let it be noted, the chair, that you are ahead of schedule. Really know how to drive that train.
We're moving to discussion item number 2, report back from the community engagement discussion group. Diana?
So I am gonna kick us off and remind us kind of how we are, where we are, and then I'm gonna pass it to Ashley to do some DPH perspective, and then to Deborah, who's joining us from Interethnica. So wanted to remind everybody that the goal of the community engagement is to better understand how both clients and providers are experiencing the behavioral health system of care. And it is connected to the mapping, although they're not the exact same thing. But it's connected to the mapping because it informs how consumers access care and flow through the system. And then also how providers kind of experience all of that stuff too. I want to specifically thank the folks who joined the discussion groups on this. So members McGuigan, Salinas, and Wong. Depending on how this goes, we may or may not have another discussion group, and it may or may not be sooner or later. So that will be like, well, we could discuss that as the discussion part comes from this. So next slide, please. Yeah, so Deborah is going to lead this discussion with the providers and the clients. And first going to pass it to Ashley to share how the DPH is thinking about community engagement and working with us on that. And then Deborah's going to talk about some practical next steps. So I'm going to pass it to Ashley next. Next slide, please, Galen. There we go.
So I actually, after our discussion last time, I went through and I pulled our drafts scenarios from the system of care hearing that we're working on this week. On Friday, we have a board of supervisors hearing, as a small group members are aware of. And we're using scenarios and flows to discuss during that meeting. There are very specific ones being used for the purposes of that meeting that were requests from the board. So I'll be sharing a couple or a few of those today. Two that we're using, one that we had an excess of that we're probably not going to use. One we're still waiting for that I can share with you guys at a later time. And in addition to these, we have other ones that I was working specifically on for IWG. But the small group and I felt it was better to line on these and share these at this, what I had at the moment for the system of care hearing. And I will add that I know we're doing a report back later, so maybe I'll hold on that note. And then there are 3 scenarios. These are still drafts. They're not completely finalized since we're still working on them for the hearing. And we're adding more detail, like profiles, like added information about diagnoses and supportive information of what some of these different services are and what we do, which was a request directly from Ronan when we previewed some of this information with her yesterday. And we also have a specific workflow draft. I just use one as an example of what the workflow or what the process looks like behind the scenes. And so I just pulled really quickly some slides together to share with you all. And this is a draft. This is not the actual report back that was initially intended for this group, but we did want to share it out before or as we're talking through the community engagement. And I didn't realize when I put these slides together that Hillary is coming after me. And so some of the information that's contextual are in her slides, so I won't steal her thunder. She has a more comprehensive or complete version of this slide deck. And so the first scenario is related to a person experiencing homelessness, accessing PES services, having 150. They are dual diagnosis. They have a dual diagnosis. And do we wait for hands until after?
I would finish your.
Okay. We'll call on you after, Steve. We'll get there. That this person is deteriorating, the social work team notices, they decline treatment. When it's offered, again, they're experiencing homelessness. So given the needs and the presentation, they're linked to stabilization services, placed in an emergency stabilization unit. And then once this person is stabilized, it's determined that they need intensive outpatient. And so the term intensive outpatient we're using for the purposes of the hearing, what we mean by that is ICM, so intensive case management, just enough. So this person is then connected to other behavioral health services and supported through coordinated entry. And the little graphic at the bottom kind of is a visual representation of what happens through BHS. It's not intended to be the actual workflow. The workflow looks a little bit differently. It's more of our internal workflow. And we'll share an example of that in a moment. And then I think should we wrap up all the slides before we go to the question?
Steve, is your question in general, like, can we get through the couple of scenarios and then get to you?
Yeah, there's only 4 slides.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I'm willing to wait.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah's on her way.
Okay, cool.
The second scenario was also a request to talk about how we work with SCRT. Mary, who is also experiencing homelessness, has a crisis on the street, has contact with the SCRT team, is transported by SCRT to DOOR for stabilization and support. The OCC is alerted about Mary's contact with SCRT, and the team reaches out to Mary while she's at DOOR and attempts to gauge her and help determine the need for services prior to her being discharged. So the OCC helps Mary obtain a shelter bed and transportation, continues to reach out to her and engage with her. And once she's at the shelter, they connect her to ongoing behavioral health services, including outpatient clinic services. And then they also help reactivate her Medi-Cal and then loop her back around to her primary care provider. Again, the bottom graphic is what that looks like for BHS. And then we can move to the next slide. And then this is an example of somebody with justice involvement. So Nadia is participating in collaborative court. She needs treatment for a substance use disorder. She's also struggling with symptoms of PTSD. We work with her through a case manager, through drug court, and she's placed at Salvation Army, where she's there for about 6 months to complete residential treatment. And while in residential treatment, she's connected to outpatient mental health. So looped back around. Slide, I believe this is the last slide. And then this is just an example. I took a TAE workflow of how what our workflow looks like behind the scenes when there's a referral, when somebody reaches out about TAE services. And so Colleen and I discussed what that looks like, and it's usually a call or an email. And then they get the referral process started, they review it, they review that person's, whether or not they have Medi-Cal, what their acuity is, what the level of care should look like. Then that person is connected to the program that best meets their needs, whether that's an FSP or outpatient service. And then the program assigns a clinician to schedule an intake appointment. The clinician meets with the client for intake and confirms placement. And if for whatever reason, when they reach out to the client, they're not responsive. We reach out several times in between that process, whether it's the initial contact or the follow-up to ensure that person, we close the loop when we get that person engaged in services. And I use the TAE specific example, just MHSF audiences. That's it. It's pretty high level. Hillary's presentation will go more in depth and provide like background on program data, like number of services, clinics, what that all looks like. And she has a much more comprehensive version of this. And again, just a reminder that these are a few of the many different scenarios and flows that we have, and I can always share what the other ones are, and the workflows as well. Steve, thanks for waiting.
Surely. And maybe this is followed up, but things get lost in time. So if Hillary's presentation clarifies it, that's great. On slide 1, what is referred to in the emergency stabilization unit? What service is that?
Isn't it?
So I'm sure OCC has access to those same FSP emergency stabilization, the hotel room.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
The
It's-
SRO.
It's a hotel room.
It's a hotel room.
Yes, it's a hotel room.
No, emergency
No, it's stabilization, like bed, basically.
Yeah. So in our contacts at ICM and FSP's emergency stabilization unit is a hotel room. We get them through our SOC.
Okay.
That's what that term usually refers to.
Yeah, and so we're gonna go back and add more detail to these, just because that's the feedback we were to add, like really specific detail of what we're meaning step by step throughout the process.
Right.
These are intended for use just with, can you say again how they're?
How we're using these, yeah, these are just for this, they were just for the system of care hearing. And so Angelica, Heather, Colleen, and I worked together on some of these specific flows. And they're just intended to kind of showcase how people are enter care and then are connected from one level of care through the next, basically.
So they wouldn't be used with community groups. They would be used in a board of supervisors.
They can be used. What we did was in the small, this is the part that I did not update on. In the small group hearing, we decided that it might be a great idea, and it's up to you guys what you guys decide ultimately, to align the work that was happening for the board and pull the scenarios from there. We have other versions of this. Like we have, like, what is it like to access from BHAC or BHAL? Like we have different variations, and because I've been working on this for so long, we have different scenarios. So we can use these. We can also use the other ones that I've been working on.
So just follow question, just follow comment. I think that if they're going to be used with community groups, it would be great to have somebody with some expertise in health literacy to really work on the language. This looks to me like it's, probably 12th grade reading level or 10th, and we generally try to, when we're for public or patient facing, we usually shoot for 4th. And so for limited English or limited literacy folks, this would be really hard to understand at all.
And I'll clarify, these were actually just supposed to be used on the provider side, not with clients.
Okay.
So then more internal based, right, I guess.
Great.
Through the
For
chair,
clients, it was be less like guided, I guess.
through the chair, I had just 2 more quick questions before we move on about that. That was my first question. I think we have urgent care, we have emergency stabilization unit in hotel rooms. I think we need to clarify exactly where they're going, because it does have implications for connections down the system. This is a client who sounds like he might even eventually be a care court referral with multiple PES visits. So I'm not sure a hotel room qualifies as a stabilization unit, but that's another discussion later. Second question, in this scenario, if the client at PES is not open to residential treatment options, are we speaking of substance use treatment because of his amphetamine use, mental health treatment, or dual diagnosis treatment? In other words, what's the context of the encouragement to a person to get involved in treatment? Was it SUD services he was refusing or some other level of care? And then I'll get my last question in.
Okay, can I clarify on that? I mean, from PS, they're not referring to SUD. I mean, if he's only gone to PS, SUD treatment is not, from PS, they're only going to be referring essentially at this point only to duck, right? I mean, it's been years and years and years, right? That from PS, you could go straight to ADU.
Not years, no, not years and years, since 2019, yeah. And then it was all, yeah. Well, I mean, that's a
multiple years. I mean, to me, it feels, if you're on my end, it feels like forever since we've been able to do that, right? Which was very convenient because it was, you went straight to PS to ADU, which was very good because if you have to do a stop from PS to duck and then hope that a bed comes open in 23 hours, who gets there, right? So to us, it's like been excruciating, but I think
But
that
to clarify the situation, that stopped because the hospital stopped referring directly to ADUs.
yeah, I didn't say it was you guys.
I'm just saying, well, but
I didn't say it was progress, there's multiple
no,
levels.
I know, but that's my problem with the discussion is that we're describing something that may in many cases not be an adequate process. It's just the one we've got. So I understand this is a map, but it's got questions built into it based on what we should.
But that's the
whole
point, right, Steve?
Yeah.
That's the
Whole
point.
point of
that
mental
we would-
health SF.
Yeah, can I let you know, so that's the point, that we would take this to providers, right, to these community meetings for providers to say exactly those things. This thing used to work better this way. So that's exactly the point. There's so many other, when we have these community meetings with providers, they're going to be able to bring these things up as the things that are now the barriers, right? This is how this should better work. From PS, people used to be able to go to ADU. And when you made that change, that actually meant that less of our clients got to ADU. So that's exactly the conversations that we're hoping to have with the community engagement meeting with providers.
Yeah, and I think that's a good transition. I mean, this isn't the end of thing. I think I'm gonna pass it to Deborah to talk about more about.
Say one thing about this though, about this mapping, that I think the thing that we had specifically also asked for is, and this is going to be specific, particular for folks in ICM and FSPs, is that we had asked for what is it to go from here all the way to like a stabilization till you're ready to step down to a lower level of care. Because that's specifically the thing that's being demanded of FSPs and ICMs, right? That we're supposed to get folks to a place where they can do step down to the less expensive options in the community. So this isn't adequate to
Go all the way.
to go to what needs to be assessed for how system flow is supposed to work, so that this thing, then you don't have this flow to ICM, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, and we do have an OCC specific flow and an ICM flow, so we can, the actual workflows, so we can actually use those. It just wasn't presented today. I just wanted to use the example of the tape that we had read.
Thank you. And again, Deborah's continuing this discussion so that we're moving on to like the practical piece and how this connects to the community. So I'm gonna pass it to her and then we could do all the questions.
I have one question on this.
Specific to this.
Are these hypotheticals or are these based on actual cases?
These are actually based on actual cases, and we're actually going to go back and add more information to them.
Yeah.
So like the level of detail, Andrea, that you were asking for and that Steve was referring to, like this more of a step-by-step specificity, we're going to trickle in.
Yes. And I think your comment, I think Member Salisa's comments was very well taken, that you need an outcome, an outcome as to what happens after the last, I don't know what to call these, arrow, I guess it is.
And we can also tailor some of the intake these and make these more specific for the purposes of IWG and the community engagement that's occurring here. These are just the ones that we're sharing specific in that SOC hearing.
Okay.
Okay, well, based on our last IWG meeting, we went ahead and started developing a screener to seek exactly who we want to talk to. And this is all just a draft, but to focus on providers who specifically work with MHSF priority populations. So first to look at asking what organization department they work at, looking at their roles, and then asking specifically which priority population the provider works with to have a diversity across the populations. And we can add to this based on the different types of population we across the different populations that we want to talk to the providers with. And then their length of time working with the MHSF priority populations, and if they've had any previous participation in past mapping process and involvement. For the discussion guide overview, what we heard was don't repeat work that has already been done and information that we already know, and ensure there's actionable next steps and accountability. So keeping that in mind, framing with a brief background on mapping and their goals and what we already know. So providers have like the existing, starting with this framing of the of existing concerns that providers have expressed with the service flow, what we want to learn to test if the maps align with this ideal service flow, and how we're going to use that information we gather for next steps. And from my understanding from what we talked about last time are that these maps are the goals that we're working towards, not how the system currently looks like. So once we show the maps to the providers, asking what are your initial impressions of these maps? Do they address the issues you have experienced in your current service flow? Do the maps capture how you think the service should flow? Is there anything you would change? And is there anything missing in the maps? And then ending the conversation with how do we get there? How can MHSF support you in taking the actions necessary to provide this smooth service flow for your client?
You need to fire me, I'm okay.
What I found.
So I'm so grateful, Hallie. I owe you. There are places- Yeah. Welcome, Sarah. Oh. I was on a call with my mom's social worker. Not great. It threw me off. Hung up, and then I just autopiloted to the office. It's not a great. So thank God when I was just about at the office when I got your text. So we are happy. God, I'm so sorry here now. Really, really, I'm so sorry. Yes, no, you do, only still. So we're on page 21 of the slides, and Deborah from Interethnica is talking about the provider discussion group. So, okay, didn't really miss anything. Sorry to interrupt. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll be late next time.
And Diana?
Yes.
Diana? Yeah, I see Steve's hand, so we're holding are we holding comments until the end of Deborah's presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, let's get through the end of Deborah's part, and then we can open it up for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then closing, providing a contact person and an opportunity to stay looped into the process for the provider group. Moving on to the consumer group, we refined the questions a little bit more in this one. So asking in the past 5 years if they've used any of the following behavioral health services. And this is something I got from BHS in the past, so this can also be refined. And moving on to screen, so that's the first question that would screen for eligibility in the discussion group. And then moving on to how long they've been using these services, and to screen if they are part of the MHSF priority population, asking if any.
Next slide, please, Kaylee.
Asking if any of the following apply to them. And then next slide, looking at demographics, so years lived in San Francisco, age, gender, sexual orientation, racial, ethnic background, and language. So we could have a diversity of backgrounds participate. And then looking at the consumer discussion group. So this one getting very specific about personal experience from starting from when they first accessed behavioral health services. So asking, think about the first time you ever used behavioral health services, walking through what happened, what types of services were you looking for, how did you find out about these services, probing to ask if they knew how to go, who to go to for these services, or if they were introduced by someone, and what was helpful or what made it difficult, and what could have made the process easier, and then walking through what happened next, if there was a referral process, how they found out what the next steps were, and then looking into timing and continuity of care, if they received the services in a timely manner, and if there were any long wait times. And continue walking through what other services have you used since then.
Steve has his hand up. Yeah, no, we, okay. We're gonna do it at the end of this, so thank you.
His hands perpetually.
And walking through each step of the process of how they found and accessed each of the services that they received, and probing throughout what was helpful and what was challenging their experience better, and ending with envisioning an ideal pathway, like how would that process look like for them. So that is it on my end. So open for questions.
Steve Fields, go for it.
Okay, what is the logistics of the provider group discussion? When will the providers have this opportunity to apply to be interviewed?
Yeah, we are still working on the logistics and the timeline. We are refining this. So I think the first step is refining exactly which providers we want to talk to before we go out with actually inviting the providers to.
And Kaylee, if you go back to slide 13, that has kind of the overall logistics, like how the providers are going to be a group and you're going to do the roadshow with the consumer, so that might be helpful.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to be one-on-one interviews. They're going to be
Keep going to slide 13.
community,
Yes,
community focus or engagement groups, yeah.
So there'd be an overview from the department, like I've seen these happen. What if, say, Health Right 360 does not have a person who is interviewed for this important information and it was missed, the department would make sure that that agency was included. Even if they
Yes.
decided not to send in a application. I just want to make sure we're comprehensive and we talk to the organizations that have the most experience or someone from them in this process.
yeah, I think we're working with DPH around the recruitment process to find the correct people for the listening sessions. And so the way that we usually do recruitment, and this may be a little bit different for this one, is invite people, see if there is representation across the different organizations, see if anyone's missing, who else to invite, and go through that overall process. If there's any more specific.
No, I think that covers it. Yeah.
Can you go back
Thank
a
you.
couple slides, please?
Can I ask a follow-up question to what Deborah just said? With that process, will you be also reaching out to providers of non-specialty mental health or providers who serve the patients in non-specialty DHS contracted program? Yeah, like all the consortium clinics, all of our other homeless services that take care of people with serious mental health substances.
That's good feedback. I think we're pretty, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, the budget's kind of limiting. So I don't know what the capacity is. So, you know, maybe in this first iteration it's specialty, but I think that's good feedback.
I mean, they, like, all the consortium.
Yeah.
So San Francisco, Free Clinic and Mission Neighborhood Hospital, Live, like all those folks, like they may have some. I think a whole different perspective,
Yeah.
as well as the Maria X and street medicine and respite, you know, that take care of the population as well.
Yeah, and I think Andrea, you had the thought or the idea that we should invite some
Yeah, I think
street and
definitely,
Yeah.
I mean, like street medicine and EMS6 and stuff. I think pot, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I feel like it would be unwieldy to have all those folks in one, so we'd want to start then having 2 or even 3, and I don't know what the possibilities are, right? For how many community engagement sessions to have with providers.
I think that's helpful feedback to hear though. Yeah.
Steve's been, I will continue to allow you to facilitate this if you'd like. I just want to be clear about that because it was sort of waving both of us.
On the last slide, the consumer group discussion.
The which slide?
The consumer group.
Oh, sorry, Keely, now the very last slide that says
Consumer
right
group
before
discussion overview.
question. It's slide 25.
The one that can't be read unless you expand it. Keep going.
Yep, that one.
That one. All right. On the first couple of bullets on the pathway, there is a comment about let's see if I can find what I'm looking for here. Like the fourth, fifth bullet down, it says, did you receive services timely manner? Did you continue to receive services? Or did you have to wait a long time between services? Should there be a bullet that talks about, did you have to wait to access services in the first place?
Yes.
That's the question. And the second question I have is, would most clients have a case manager assigned? Should they be asked? Should they be asked if they had a case manager?
That would be helpful.
And if they did, was the case manager helpful in facilitating access through the care network?
And they would have probably history and they have other existing, or again, everything, something that is existing or something that is currently, I think that would definitely be helpful with this whole process.
I don't know the network well enough,
Right.
but I just,
I think it's rough because folks really, I mean, at the outpatient levels of care, I mean, they have like a therapist, I mean, that person does very little case management, right? It's only when you get to the ICM level of care that you have a actual comprehensive case management service.
Yeah.
But folks have case managers, particularly all over the place, like someone at Glide and someone at St. Anne, you know, and what those folks actually do is quite limited in comparison to, so you really have to, if they say they had a case manager, then you'd have to ask them where was that case manager to understand what actually, what system of, you know, where that case manager is actually responsible for.
I mean, I think it's
Yeah.
less important necessarily whether it be a quote case manager, but that there is someone who they can, as a person can turn to help navigate the system.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, most of us here can't figure out how to do it. I don't know how anybody who's actually in the system probably could figure out how to navigate.
So I wonder then if that question is not about a case manager, but like, do you feel like you're supported or you have support to navigate the system and access service?
Or a very general term of a service provider, rather, maybe not use case manager.
Yeah, because it could,
Service, some sort of service
Although-
provider.
I do feel like
There was,
it would be useful to kind of get at the, the lack of access to case managers and the fact that people
Yeah.
need them.
Yeah.
So maybe asking that question is important to
Yeah.
see how many people actually get that.
Yeah, 100%.
And maybe it's less about evaluating, like, how did they do for helping them, but more about just, did they have anyone, And I think just saying like general sort of someone to help you, they might say, yeah, my aunt helped me,
Yeah.
So maybe getting a little, I think we can kind of wordsmith that still, but the idea, I think we should. There.
Yeah, the
And-
way,
Oh, I just had I wanted to pivot to a different question, so if you wanted.
okay, yeah, the way, all of this is super helpful. The way, we have these discussions is that they flow like a natural conversation.
Yeah.
So having that like general, like, was there someone able to help you? And then getting with those specific probes of like, was there a case manager? Was there, and then like walking through that stuff. So, yeah.
I was just gonna say, related to what Dr. Hammer had brought up. Did we discuss the universe of what providers would be, or clients from what providers would be included in this? Did you already talk about that? Or is there like a list that we could look at so that we could, to her point, like consider who else we might want to?
There hasn't been a list put together yet.
Okay.
And so I think when we do, we can definitely run it.
That works.
And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, and timing we could talk about, but it does seem like another discussion group would be helpful to kind of
Yeah.
look at specifics about
You're right.
like the discussion group, the discussion guide and screening and stuff. So my suggestion, and I'm looking at you, Deborah, is for you to like take a next pass or whatever, and then ping us when you're ready for the rest of the group to jump in and we could like do a call out for a discussion group at that point to get into these more details. Cause I think that those are good points.
Yeah, I think those are two different conversations. Narrowing down the discussion guide of what we want to talk about and then the recruitment process. And the recruitment process, we really are looking to DPH and the IWG members who have that expertise in knowing like who the providers are. So we can work together and get that initial list and then get feedback.
Yeah, and I think it'll be important too, to wrap up some of these maps and share them out as a part of that process, because you'll need that for the facilitators guide too. So there's some things that we owe Deborah that she needs so that we can start narrowing down the scope and putting together a list. Some of that's on us, and then some of that is the small group to help decide like which way we go.
So this is not the end of this
No.
discussion is what I'm hearing. So stay tuned.
Riveted.
So I think I would suggest, who's chair now?
Me.
Okay, thank you.
The chair is the chair.
Chair, sure, I would suggest that we move to public comment for community engagement.
Let's do that.
Okay. So members of the public who wish to provide public comment on agenda item 2, which is community engagement, you're invited to participate in 3 ways. I'll first call on people who are here in person, and there are no members of the public here in person. And so
Are you sure?
they're in the room that I can see. So if you sense a spirit that I'm happy to paint that too. Then we'll call on people who are joining us by video. If you're joining us by WebEx, please raise your hand, your virtual hand, and we will unmute you when it is your turn to speak, and everybody will have 2 minutes. I'm going to refresh the public attendee, see if anybody is raising their hand. I do not see any hands raised. Does anybody see any hands raised that I'm missing?
No, nope.
Not a trick question.
Okay. I do not see any people wishing to make public comment, so would suggest that we close public comment.
Cool. Okay.
Welcome to the like also can,
I-
you know,
Next
if you're
we-
freezing, you can leave whenever you.
I'm not freezing, but.
Next we have.
Before
the,
we start discussion item 3, do we want to go back and do the vote for the absent
Oh,
member?
on the attendance or So we had deferred,
Okay.
get you up, Sarah. We had deferred voting on attendance because we thought you were on your way, which you
Yeah.
thankfully were. So we could go back and vote to excuse absent members now, or we could do that at the end.
Let's do it now.
Move to excuse Member Patterson.
Okay, wait, so we gotta go back to, this is slide. Slide 4. Yeah, so member Patterson is the only not here member, and he emailed me and said he was sick.
Re-up.
Uh,
Move to excuse. Member
Second.
Patterson.
second that. So all in favor?
I,
Yes.
Okay, so that was, how many of you are? 7, no, 8. We're now 8. 8 out of 8 vote to excuse member Patterson. So member Patterson is excused.
I'm sorry to be a stickler, but we do need to do a roll call vote.
Oh, okay, we need to do a roll
Sorry.
call. Okay. Yes means that you excuse member Patterson, and no means you do not excuse member Patterson.
Member
So,
public comment.
on video, member Fields, how do you vote?
Yes.
Member Gonzalez,
Yes.
member Hammer,
Yes.
member Lipton,
Yes.
member McGuigan,
Yes.
member Salinas,
Yes.
member Short,
Yes.
member Wong. Okay, now we have officially voted to excuse member Patterson. Thank you, Jet. That sounded sarcastic. I didn't mean it sarcastically. I meant it actually like real. So now we are on slide 28.
Excuse me.
Sure.
So this is the report back from the discussion group about the progress report. And I'm passing it to Jen.
Yeah. Yes. Hello, everyone. Is my sound okay? Diana, can you,
Yep.
can you confirm?
Yep, you're good.
So just to give us a little bit of like framing about where we are. So the progress report, we are mandated every year to do a progress report on the IWG. And the purpose of it is that it's submitted to the board of supervisors, the mayor, the director of health. There is no direction in the ordinance on what the report should include. And this year it's due on December 1st. In previous years, as the facilitators, we've gone through the minutes and have pulled kind of the key points of progress and put it in a report. We received feedback last year that we really should be talking about this and more co-developing it. And so that's what we're doing this year. We're going to be discussing, in previous years' reports, there's been a lot of process oriented, like how we're working together. The implementation report, which is different than the progress report. There's only one mandated implementation report, but that was the December one. That was the December report that had a lot of opportunities that were in it that were listed on things that the IWG wanted to think about moving forward. So at this point, we're thinking about like how we can use the progress report, use the implementation report's content, and then be able to talk about progress towards that content. So we're striving for this report to be succinct. We want it to be 5 to 8 pages so that decision makers and the public reads it. And so that's kind of the general approach of what we're hoping to do and what the progress report is. So before we start talking about what the content of the report, I just wanted to make sure, are there any questions about the progress report, its connection to past progress reports and implementation report, or anything else? Okay. So the Steve Squares, Steve Lipton and Steve Fields, we
rock
we
this
were
bunch.
We met to review kind of the outline of what the report could be. And so as your facilitators, we brought forward kind of what we thought it could be. And then we talked about some refinements and some things we might want to do with it. There is an outline for the report that has like intro and all these kinds of things, but really we see 4 areas of content for the report. So that includes the first area of content is really thinking about progress on foundational opportunities. Those were identified in the December 22 implementation report, and we're going to review those in just a bit. The second part of the content is to talk about key activities underway. So that has to do with what you just talked about, mapping, community engagement, things like that. which are different than the third area, which is progress on specific mental health service domains. And progress here means not what DPH is doing, but more the kind of things that the IWG has advised on. And then we can get some information about like how DPH used it. And then finally, another section, a final section on conditions that were either supportive of or were barriers to making progress on any of the above. So what we'd like to do is like the key activities underway and the progress on specific MHSF domains, we can pull that from the minutes and we can give this back to you for conversation or for comment. But we wanted to spend today talking about the substantive areas of the progress on the foundational opportunities. So that's number 1. And number 4, the conditions that were either supportive or barriers to progress. So the way we thought we'd handle this conversation for the rest of this section is that Steve Fields and Steve Lipton, as your virtual and your local people, your locally present person, are going to talk a little bit about why we're focusing on the foundational opportunities, thinking a little bit about what the conditions are, and then we're going to have a brainstorm for both of those two things, for foundational opportunities, progress, and for conditions. Okay. Any questions before we dig into content now? Okay, Member Fields, you're up.
Okay, so this opportunity number 1, Jen, you had expanded this I thought in a slide, but
the report itself has a lot of language that can't fit on a slide. So I would encourage, if you go back to the original implementation report, there's like a couple paragraphs for each one of these that you can see the full language of it, and I just summarize it here because just slide length, you really can't fit those paragraphs in.
Okay, so one of the things that emerged in our discussion about going forward with what I guess is a progress report from the IWG is the concern, I think, that's been expressed a number of different times in the various issues we've been raising, trying to sort of get ahead of initiatives that had already started, be involved in initiatives that were being developed, and many of those individual efforts that have been mounted by the Department of Public Health that are called for in the legislation. To get back now to a more general concern expressed that now we need to move as a IWG in our strategic relationship with the Department of Public Health in expanding our discussion to the system of care implications and initiatives that are called for both in the legislation, but also in the developing of a response that's called for by the legislation from the department with advice from the IWG. And what are we recommending going forward to meet the call in part 4 of the original legislation for expanding the community-based treatment system? And there's when we first started IWG, there was a whole list of principles that we might want to put up again. We spent some time on expressing principles that we wanted to use to hold up the kinds of initiatives that we were recommending in the context of legislation. And it certainly included the right to least restrictive setting and to make sure that we were offering programs in the community for individuals before institutionalization was the immediate go-to methodology. So we're seeing now that the success of mental health SF in what it is presented to the community, to the people in the mental health world of San Francisco and behavioral health, is to discuss how are we going to expand the opportunities for treatment and support services and housing with support services in the community, because a lot of the concentration of our work in the first year and a half has been on supporting early intervention, crisis interventions, all, as I've said before, appropriately needed given the crisis we have on the streets. But we have not done enough about speaking about the ecology of the system of care that we are moving toward, meaning a coordinated, integrated, harm reduction based, treatment based, and housing based system of care for people, because we can open up all the crisis interventions that we need. But as people keep saying, and as the Chronicle keeps reporting, and as every time there's a story, a successful intervention at the crisis level with an individual who needs help is not helpful if there isn't a place to refer them. And I think the IWG, working with the department, has an obligation now to flesh out the system of care, the balanced system of care that has treatment opportunities that match our interventions on the crisis level. So we're calling for that opportunity to be a focus for the IWG and working with the department going forward. And basically, I think members can read section part 4 of the original legislation that once again outlines priorities, but also directions for what I think is the most important part of the legislation myself, which was the expansion of the system of care to be able to provide, as we keep saying, treatment on demand or as needed, as close to it as we can. So that's the first part that we want to spend time on. And I think every component that we discuss, we're recommending that our progress report emphasize the need to talk about these initiatives in the context of the overall system of care, how it fits and how it works with other levels of care to assure that we're moving people toward recovery and maximum ability to live and thrive in the community.
Steve Lipton has offered to.
Do you want me to read opportunity number 1 that we adopted last
I
year?
thought you meant reading the part 4
No.
of the legislation he was referring to.
Well, I could do that too. But since we
but-
adopted opportunity 1 last year,
I see.
and it was in the report.
This is a summary of.
And this is summary because there's not enough room to put
Yeah.
the paragraph. It's 1 paragraph.
Okay, please.
So if you don't, so for those.
I unilaterally said.
Okay, so what we said last year was opportunity number 1, focus on the system of care rather than discrete programs. The IWG recommends expanding its current focus from advising on discrete mental health SF related projects to ensure the mental health SF components are strategically placed in the larger system of care to meet the needs of the mental health SF target population. For example, the current mapping project offers a foothold for identifying and filling gaps and unmet needs. In addition, the work of the IWG should begin to consider the implementation of section 15.104G4 of the ordinance that calls for the mental health and substance abuse treatment expansion to develop a full continuum of least restrictive community-based services for the target population. This service expansion mandate calls for a range of services that is much more comprehensive than the current domain of new beds and facilities. That was the revolutionary language we adopted last year.
And that's what I was hoping would be up on the slide, not this sentence.
Well, we can do that as well. Read the larger.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, you have it up, Steve Lipton?
This? No, it's only what I just read.
That was it.
That was it.
No. Oh, I thought
No,
you feel
that's
that with number 2, we have a similar.
Oh, I can read number 2 if you want me to.
Is that what you meant, Steve Fields?
no.
Oh.
We just spent quite a bit of time talking about this yesterday, and that what Steve Lipton just read was a more expansive expression that has previously been shared with the membership of the opportunity number 1. This is a more limited description, but Steve's right. That's what I was calling for to be put up. Opportunity 2 then also
Okay,
is there.
you were just explaining what he. Okay.
What we're saying
Yeah.
is that opportunity
Gotcha.
number 1 be the core of the report.
Right.
I mean, if you recall, there were 6 opportunities and we're focusing really on the first 2.
Wonderful to have so many on. Okay, so should we move to 2 now? That makes
Yeah,
sense?
I mean, 2 is an integrated implementation in more detail of what the focus on opportunity number 1 would entail, which is as we talk about moving to the role of the individual discrete programs in a system of care initiative that we're promoting, consistent with the legislation, that we want these discussions about proposed elements and how they fit to focus on evaluation of outcomes of these elements and including how they work with other components of a continuum of care to create an endpoint outcome target for individuals. And then as we've done a lot of work, I think one of the, as I said last time we met, is on the work of the expanded case management and coordinated care element of the system. It's now time, I think, to always include, and I think the question from the last section about this that was raised is how does coordinated care and case management and the work with individuals as a connecting element in orienting and referring and supporting and evaluating the success of individuals in the various levels of service that they may access. So we want to have an argument to make that moving toward these integrated elements that work with one another as the mapping project begins to address how is this coordinated system of care move us toward the outcomes that we're looking for and that our individuals who use our treatment system are looking for rather than just a standing discrete siloed program that meets the literal discussion of expansion in the legislation.
Okay, do we want to now run through the section on confirming conditions and then have a discussion?
Yeah, I think that was our idea. Chair
Okay, let's do
Short.
that. Who wants to run that through? I have Steve or Jen listed here, but it could be any Steve. I mean,
I defer to them.
Jen, do you want to do this?
she just said she deferred.
I know, I'm deferring back to you.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, one of the things that we talked about is we do that, like there are a number of barriers that have been discussed throughout the years that we know is top of mind for many of you. And so we wanted to make sure that like when we're talking about opportunities is that at the same time, we're also talking about conditions that either facilitate or inhibit, progress. And this year, the group has had a number of issues that have affected their ability to function optimally. So some of the things we talked about and we have been talking about around this table, our membership, leadership as in, like chair and vice chair, meeting topics is how we're doing agendizing and doing meeting topics and even just like mapping approaches. So all of those things are things that have kind of affected our ability or your ability to meet your requirements and your mandate. So what we did is like with all of these different areas, we tried to think about how can we succinctly address these. And so we came up with, I tested this out and it seemed to fit, it seemed to work with this, with the progress or the discussion group, but we wanted to bring it here because we put it into 3 different buckets. And we put it into process optimization, so that's the first thing. And I think that's really going to be like, there's another discussion group that has been really working through how can we make sure that these meetings are meaningful, is that they're focused on root causes, is that they are advising and supportive. And so the thing to note in this progress report is like what the challenges are and how this group is moving forward on trying to address them. So, process optimization, meeting optimization. The second thing that we've talked about over time is the seats. Is it a fully seated advisory group is absolutely critical to the success of this group. And, both because it ensures the diverse voices of the community. And that's like the values part of it, but also just basic procedural ability to have quorums and meetings. And so we thought we'd include a discussion of how many seats are open and for how long and how that has affected. It's been a barrier for being able to create the kind of conditions that would be supportive of progress. And then the final one is, clarity of what areas or what level of influence this group has. There've been a number of times when the IWG has not received information on key decisions. So SCIRT, the MHSC building, is a blend of communication and transparency with what DPH can and cannot share. And there's probably other things, but it's kind of like, where's the influence of this group? Where are they positioned as far as like when communication comes out about something, when decisions are being made, and what is their role, which is kind of what's wound up in clarity and about areas and level of influence. So those are the three we came up with. And when we'd like to go back to talk about the foundations and get everyone's feedback on that, and then get into the conditions next and get your feedback on that, including adding other areas that you see that we need to add and to communicate. And again, this is about progress to date. So, we can talk, it's more about like what has happened and not what is going to be happening. So I'd encourage us to kind of think about like kind of reflecting on what's been happening. Before we move on, so what we're going to do now is we're going to move to the brainstorm of the progress towards opportunities, and and then the second brainstorm will be on the conditions. Are there any comments before we move into the brainstorming portion of our agenda?
I think we're good.
Good. All right. So if you could move forward, Kaylee, in the slides. Steve Lipton and Steve Fields, is there anything as the members of the progress or the discussion group, is there anything that you'd like to add before we get started, or some kind of context that would be helpful?
I think we should move into the comments.
Okay. Steve Lipton?
Yeah, I think we're okay.
Okay. So maybe I'll share my screen in just a bit, but what we're really going to focus on, like this kind of systems change is really complicated and big. And so when you say progress, progress can take a lot of time. So one way we can think about it is kind of signals of progress. So not that the thing has changed, but what are the signals that things are moving forward in this area? So and the signals can be kind of smaller scale, but we're just trying to identify like what has happened that feels like progress towards these opportunities before we get to conditions. And I think I can share my screen. Let me see if I can.
I just made you a co-host, Jen. So
Thank you. Okay, you will, okay, share. Oh. Sure, no, that's not it either. Come on. Okay. Yay? Is it up there? Okay, good.
Yep.
I'm glad that figured that one out. So what you see on your screen is, so again, signals of progress, things that you can see that are kind of a suggestion that something is happening. The opportunities, again, those were identified in the December 2022 implementation report that is on your website, on the IWG website, if you want to go back and look at it. Opportunity one is shift the focus of the IWG to be more on the system of care rather than a discrete program. So the two Steves summarized that and read from the report. So I open it to you. Is like, what are the signals of progress towards opportunities with shifting the focus of the IWG to be on the system of care rather than discrete programs? Time frame right now is from December.
I have a clarifying question, Jen. Is this the signals of progress that a group has seen, or what would be potential signals theoretically that progress was being made?
Yeah, this is actual signals because it's a progress report. So we want to say what progress has been made since you identified shifting the focus. Yeah, thank you for that.
I was going to suggest that one of the things that we can talk about here is program evaluation. For example, we did the summarized site visit as part of our evaluation of a program, learning about a program and evaluating it, and had a discussion
I
topic.
really don't think we evaluate. It's saying,
No, but we did get some insight and,
Mhm.
you know, some in person and really a better feel, I guess.
sure, I mean, it was
Yeah.
useful.
And
I just don't know if it fits under this, you know,
Yeah, sir, I think it's still,
progress kind of thing.
yeah, let's keep on moving with the brainstorm idea, though.
okay,
You
I
know, we
mean,
can always come back and
no,
talk about
I
it.
won't challenge any.
Not an audit. We don't.
No,
have-
no, I mean, but even,
And so, you know, I mean, part of our focus here is to look at programs, and it may be a high level look. And I think as Member McGuigan indicated, you know, we can gain insight from it.
Yeah.
We can learn from it.
but
You
I,
know, we had the same discussion with case management a few months ago. And we had lots of questions about I think it was case management at the last meeting or the last meeting. So I think there's some things we've done in looking more at programs from an operational standpoint than a developmental standpoint. And we clearly, the IWG has clearly moved
I'm
on.
gonna interrupt, you don't need to defend it anymore because we've decided we're not gonna have, we're just
And-
gonna throw out all because it's a brainstorm and
Okay.
that's, thank you, Jen, for reminding me. It's just brainstorm and I'm sorry for challenging it. And let's just throw out all our ideas and then we can go back and, you know.
The brainstorming
Hash it
there.
out.
Perfect.
And Sarah, your motion on the skirt team called for specific information to be provided to the IWG. I mean, we're clutching at some straws here because we haven't done a lot of quote evaluation. But
Well, this
we can go back and look to see.
for evaluation, to be clear, this is looking for sort of evidence that we've worked towards this goal, right? Which
Yes.
is looking at things from a larger, sort of more global system focus rather than just looking at piece programs. Does that sound right, Jen? How I described it?
Yep, that's right. And I actually, just as we talked, these are so interconnected in some ways that I just, instead
Yeah.
of trying to bifurcate them, I just put them under one blob and we can always come back and distribute them if we need to. But just,
Okay.
you're right,
Does
Sarah.
map-
That's what we're trying to do.
I think mapping is a perfect example.
That was my other comment.
Although we haven't done it. Our aspiration to do mapping fits in this.
Well,
Yeah.
even just those flow scenarios, I think is a signal that we need more focus on system of care.
Exactly.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
The flow scenarios, I would say is a signal that we're focusing more on system of care and where the IWG components fit.
So are you saying we can throw out either in one or two right now, or we still
Yeah.
just want to focus? Okay.
I think you throw it all out.
Many signals for number two. Really from responses. I mean, I think actually, I'll take that back. The motion on process that we did, we located it with SCRT in the process that happened for those changes and then proposing a new process. I think that's a signal.
Yeah.
That we want to be involved in the strategic, setting strategy rather than just responding to things after they happen.
I also think I forget what we're sort of calling it now, but so it's not bed optimization, but
New Benson facility.
thank you. Well, yes, but that's often a report about. So the one that we discussed last time, I think it was.
You mean optimization versus utilization?
Well, it wasn't even called utilization. There was a different name they used, but so that project of trying to sort of inventory all of the beds and facilities essentially What, does
They're
anyone,
calling
you know what I'm
it's
talking
called
about?
The bed optimization. It's
Well,
called optimization.
was it still called that? Okay, I thought the
Yeah.
name had changed.
I think it was.
Okay, let's call it bed optimization. Yeah, maybe that's what confused me. Yeah, we were saying this before utilization. Yeah, you're right. Maybe that's.
Steve, who said that this isn't actually,
Yeah.
this, Steve, whose last name I forget. This
Lipton.
Yeah.
Lipton said, since this isn't actually optimization, this is.
Yeah.
utilization.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so that exercise, whatever we're,
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember you saying that.
and that actual, not just the discussion, I think, but that effort is an example of looking at, the whole system versus it wasn't let's take a look at X program and see how many beds they've got and are they doing okay? And let's focus on, but it's a way to sort of look at the entire landscape, right? So I would put that in that. And you cannot challenge me because we're just brainstorming.
I think opportunity number two was an idea that the IWG should be setting its agenda as to where it wants to go versus responding to the department's agenda to look at certain things. And I think that's what that includes. And we haven't had remember, we missed 2 meetings. And so we've had kind of an odd year. We've had 4 vacancies, but we at least have a place to start.
And that suggestion definitely also.
That comes later. That comes
simultaneously or maybe additionally, but it did come up in our process committee.
Yeah.
To have, the group be much more involved in setting the agendas.
Yeah.
So
And
mention that too, that it was part of that.
there's a corollary to this, and I think Jen thought it probably wasn't necessarily, I'm not sure whether you thought it was not germane but I'll raise it, which is that we should, and it maybe comes up later when we talk more about the agenda setting, that we as a group look to identify whether clients, providers, or other third-party sources that we want to invite to meet with the IWG to give us further information about mental health SF programs and so forth. Not that we want to cut out the department, but that we want to have, maybe more proactive as having presentations from those who are actually in the field or affected by the services. Not so easy, but it's an idea.
I mean, I think I'm going to jump in. It looks like I'm the only one who puts up a hand. So I'm going to jump into the conversation as if I were around the table. I mean, part of the problem with this terminology, we're issuing a progress report, which is an opportunity for us to communicate on the status of the implementation of SF mental health, is that both of these opportunities are built around something that hasn't happened, because that's why we're calling in a shift of focus. If we'd been doing them, we wouldn't be saying we need to shift focus. So this part of the discussion is about clarifying as a group, if we agree that going forward, because these things have not been an integral part of the discussion or the process or the way in which we've been discussing expansion of the system of care, that we'd like to have these 2 frames defined going forward. So by definition, if we could come up with a bunch of examples of progress in both of these things, then we wouldn't be asking for a shift of focus. It's actually, so all these things that are raised are calling to weaknesses in the movement so far of working on implementing the legislation toward the expansion of the system of care, as opposed to elements that are clearly called for in the legislation. So there are opportunities. We're not going to have a whole lot of examples of it. And I think the discussion earlier, as we said, of the mapping process ironically wasn't necessarily about what have we got in the system and how is it working, but was about how do people understand what we've got now and what's out there. And obviously, as we started the discussion, there were flaws in the mapping process, and which, given the outreach to consumers and people who use the services and the outreach to providers, is meant to help clarify. I mean, that's a first step, perhaps, in having to talk about how do we talk about implementation of gaps in the service system or things we want to emphasize in the service system, unless we take a look at what's happening now. And the example given of, well, yeah, that's how people get from PES to a program, but probably we should look at the fact that there's no referrals going to the ADUs is not a positive. It's an awareness that we need to look at. And I would suggest as we start the mapping process, we're going to see a roadmap ourselves for what expansion of the community system needs to look like as an integrated system people actually have to use and navigate. So we're not going to have a lot of examples going forward. Progress is bringing this up and perhaps having support of the IWG in both of these opportunities of saying, this is how we want to define an important part of our relationship going forward with the department as we talk about the continued implementation of mental health SF.
You know, Steve, I agree that if I really think about examples of this, I come up pretty blank, and we haven't made a lot of progress on this shift. And I honestly think it's important to acknowledge that, and not sort of try to come up with, or grasp at straws to, come up with, well, because we're not trying to like pass a test here or anything, I don't think. I think rather we're using this, it is a report, but we're also using it, it has a purpose in terms of evaluation for us too, right? To learn from and see what we need to improve, et cetera. So I think there should even be a bullet about, we haven't done a lot of concrete action towards either of these steps. And that is something that we have a commitment to, actualize moving forward, something like that,
I agree with that completely. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else on this brainstorm? We kind of said we're out of, because in particular, well, I think on both of these, but in particular for me, that responsive versus strategic, we've definitely been a little too heavy on the responsive. And part of that is though, we're kind of put in that position often. And so that is something that's more maybe philosophical or whatever, to consider, but how do we remain strategic without sort of, ignoring the opportunities that come up to address sort of sudden changes or changes in the environment or whatsoever, right? So it does require somewhat of a balance. I think that it would be frustrating for all of us if we were entirely only sort of strategic future planning and then things were happening meanwhile and we're just not, recognizing that. But the more we can, I guess, once we get trucking more, then we have a little more of a direction that we're putting out there so that things that happen should align with that, so that there shouldn't be as many sort of surprises. That doesn't mean we'll ever be able to control like a new state law that comes down the pike that we have to implement or whatever, right? But again, maybe sort of philosophizing, but I can do that on the chair. Do we feel done with this section, folks? At least for now?
Wanted to do a time check too, because Hillary's going to join us in about 9 minutes and we've not had a break yet either. So wanted to time check.
So I have these down and we can work on them between now and our next meeting to put these into kind of more of a narrative of some things, but the overarching frame for this is like that there hasn't really been a lot of significant progress, and the significant progress hasn't happened because the conditions aren't there to really support it. And so that kind of leads us to the conditions for success, which are barriers to success, which is what we've been talking about, and supports. And Chair Short, I put in this comment that you have. It's like we're often put in a position of not being able to realize our opportunities because it's not within our control, and so kind of rethinking that. We did,
Wait,
as I mentioned,
I'm just gonna pause for a minute. In response to the question, you're saying you're moving forward, it sounds like, and so we're trying to just like get through this last part before we take a break. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So hang on, everyone. Let's get through this last section, and then hopefully we'll get at least a 5-minute or something.
Sure.
Make
Thank
us
you.
happy. Okay, cool.
Yeah, and if somebody has to go do human things, you should go do your human things. So process optimization, I think that we have a whole discussion group that's been working on that, and so we can summarize. I'm asking the process optimization group, would you be comfortable with just focusing on membership and clarity and whatever else we need, because we'll be summarizing that here?
I would.
Yeah, I had an exchange with, and
Okay.
I don't know how we do this in the report. I'd like to see it highlighted and not buried. That it is astonishing that we have not only did we have 4 vacancies, but we have 2 vacancies that are now at least a year and a half. Because I know I can date it from when I joined this group about a year ago, May, and there were 2 vacancies then. And so I think it's clearly led that we have, with all due respect to Member Patterson, who is, he did attend the last optimization meeting, but has not.
But consistency is important.
But we've had attendance issues, and we've skipped 2 meetings, and I think we need to highlight that in the report. I think the other one is, we've had a couple of occasions where we felt disrespected, not getting information in a timely manner, and the 2 resolutions sort of go to that issue. And I think we need to highlight that in the report.
Okay, thank you. But in regards to this question of I can't remember, you and and I'm not sure who else was in this process optimization committee. I don't know who. So the question was are we cool with discussing these issues of membership and the clarity about areas and levels of influence within that committee? So we're okay with that. Jen, I don't know if you remember who or if anyone else we need to
I think that was the group you were in.
Oh,
Who else was there?
yeah, that's what I'm trying to remember. Anyway, let's just say for now, I think that's a yes. Okay. So is that all you wanted to know, Jen?
I think so. Unless when we went through there, if there's anything that people want to make sure that we include in the report, like if these feel sufficient enough to kind of take the next step of writing what's in there, or if there's something else that you want to make sure is in the report or highlighted.
Huh. Can we still chime in? I might have some thoughts on that, but nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
But no one else right now? Okay.
Yep. So our next steps with this then is we're going to start using what the discussion group talked about. We're going to use this information that we gathered from you today. We're going to be going back through minutes and past meetings to pull out other things to start to develop this report. Again, 5 to 8 pages is what we're striving for. And then we're gonna circulate it, and we're going to talk about it and confirm it at the next meeting. Between that meeting and now, we're going to be writing. Wondered what kind of involvement this group wants, or if you just want to wait to see what the report is at the next meeting, because we could have another discussion group to review it if you'd like, or that's probably the option. Do we need to have another discussion group to kind of have an interim check-in on how the progress report is shaping up?
When you say see it at the next meeting, you mean a draft?
Yeah, we would have a draft to respond to, but if we need to do a little bit, by the time it gets to a draft, it's pretty done, so if there needs to be some kind of midpoint check-in, we should think about that.
I mean, for me personally, you're involving us in it already now. So I feel comfortable with reviewing a draft.
Okay.
In part because I'm sensitive to how many groups there are and how much time people have and all that. But do other people have any feelings different from that?
I agree.
Okay. Okay, well, I
Anybody
will
else
invite
want another group?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I'll invite the group if during this month, if somebody would like to meet and talk about the report, if you leave this and you're like, I think I really want to be part of shaping this, let me know and we will set up a discussion group that will be open to all of the members.
That sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we need to move to public comment.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so members of the public who wish to provide public comment on agenda item 3, which is the IWG progress report. No people in person who are members of the public, so if you're joining online, please raise your hand and we will unmute you when it's your turn to speak. And you will have 2 minutes to speak. I'm going to refresh members of the public. I don't see any raised hands. I think we can close public comments.
Okay. Before we move on, so we have just a check. So Diana mentioned this earlier. It's like we have an hour left. Hillary is going to be joining us for the director update, which is very important. We do have this one middle part, which is the meeting optimization. There's like 3 slides that are in the deck we have that are devoted to just kind of the considerations and what they're thinking about, and then some agendizing for next time. So I guess it's up to the chair. Do you want to reserve a certain part of the meeting to do this, or do you want to just handle it asynchronously, meaning that we would just post the IWG meeting minutes and people could review them on their own?
Personally, I think that's fine.
Okay.
Unless anyone objects.
Are you saying that we wouldn't discuss meeting optimization?
No.
I think that is what she's saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you for.
I'm saying for discussion item 4,
You
basically.
said meeting minutes,
Yeah, that's what confused.
optimization, right, Jen?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry if I said meeting minutes. I meant
Item 4 you're
optimization. Thank
talking
you.
about, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we should reserve 15 minutes to talk about meeting optimization.
Okay. So that means at 11.
I think that's fine.
45, then we would try to transition over to that section. Is that correct?
So I think that's a question is, my understanding is Hillary's going to join like right around now. And so it seems like, I think the question is, do we have her report and then go back to the meeting optimization, or do we put meeting optimization right now and then Hillary would do after that? I
I think
think,
we have respect her time and do it after.
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
I agree.
Okay, so why don't we take that 5-minute break, and when she comes, we'll let her know
Me
that
too.
we're hoping to
Let's go.
transition to
Well,
this.
we
at
haven't seen,
11:45.
is there a microwave?
Thank you.
There is.
Okay, that's all I remember. It's full then. Oh, you're coming? Yeah.
Hey, Diana? Diana, will you have time to check in with Hillary and kind of let her know what the time? Is Hillary there yet?
No, not yet. She's in a meeting right next door.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so when she comes in, we should just kind of inform her of the time that we have, which she will appreciate, I
So
think.
in general, the idea is we would like her to end at 1:45 if possible. Is that
That's right.
what we're asking her? Okay.
Yeah. And if she's like, when we reconvene, if she's still busy, we could always flip these and do this first and let her know. I don't know. Maybe Ashley can
Okay.
communicate that to her, how she would like to handle it.
Okay. So we're still waiting for a couple more people to come back, but when we reconvene, we'll do the director's update, Kaylee, so that's slide 45.
Sounds good.
Oh, just knocked his head.
We're not gonna guess.
HBCA.
Okay, we are back to having a quorum.
Oh, yeah. And, you know,
Next time we're gonna get gloves, IWG gloves, right?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
take the headphones out.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's listening. Say something about sharing my muffin. Responsibility.
Sorry.
Okay, so, we're back. And we're gonna hand it to Dr. Cunnins, is that correct? Anything before that? Okay, so then it's all yours.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Hi, everyone. Good to be here. Hi, everyone online as well. I think it's just Member Fields, is that right? Hi,
Yeah.
hi, Steve. Hi, all in the room. So I'm gonna aim to wrap up by 11:45 to try to get the meeting back sort of on time. I'm guessing that I'm not gonna make it through everything. So let me just say that. So I have some verbal updates. And then I wanted to share with you or preview the presentation that we'll be giving at a system of care hearing that's happening this Friday in front of the Board of Supervisors. These slides, we're still finalizing them. So we're happy also, if we haven't sent them out, we'll get them out with sort of, we're finalizing some data points and so forth. So in addition, first of all, Board of Supervisor update, in addition to the hearing that's happening this Friday, we've also been called to appear at a hearing on treatment on demand on Thursday, November 9th. This will be at the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee. And so that is a different committee than what is now the Select Committee on Behavioral Health and Homelessness.
And Kaylee, that's on the next slide, that information.
Oh, thank you. Next slide. Great. I wanted to also share with you an update on Care Court and also SB 43. So Care Court has launched. I think that's the most important thing to say. Thanks to actually Member Gonzalez, Dr. Almeida, who all of you know, who have been leading the planning and implementation. We have, I think, in place, I think this has been announced, interim inspector. We're very lucky to have Jose Luis Guzman agree to fulfill the role of interim director. He came on about 2 weeks ago, so he's still settling in. We will be hiring for a permanent director. We are additionally have hired some staff and we'll be hiring a couple more. We're trying to fill roles for doing the pieces that have been assigned to DPH. We are meeting regularly with the court, with our city attorney, colleagues from the mayor's office to use this tool that has been given to us by the state in order to engage and stabilize more people in care. And so stay tuned and we'll give you a more rich update in the coming meetings. Finally, before I move into previewing the presentation, I want you all to be aware, and you likely are, that on October 10th, the governor signed a new law called SB 43, which updates the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act. That is the law that defines conservatorship. The law expands grave disability to include people who live with severe substance use disorder and those who are unable to provide for their own personal safety or medical care. DPH has been asked to co-chair an executive steering committee to implement these new criteria, as well as, and we will be co-chairing this with members from Department of Aging Services, DAS, and specifically the Conservator's Office. There are members from other agencies who will be on the steering committee, including San Francisco Fire Department, Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. We are being asked to, under an executive order, which we can share with this group. Actually, we should send this out so you're aware of what we're being asked to do, which includes really coordinated and consolidated assessment, tracking, and making sure folks who might be eligible for conservatorship are getting appropriately assessed and evaluated. Okay, let me transition into a preview of the slide.
Can I
for
ask
the
you a very,
citizens hearing.
10-second question?
Yes.
Are you, how is the Department for MS mental health that's affected by the 3% cutback
Oh,
announced by the mayor?
for the mid-year budget
Yeah.
cuts. I think we have been asked to cut vacant positions as a department. I believe that other cuts are still getting worked through by the department. I don't believe at this point we anticipate any cuts to services with what is funded by Prop C or by general fund.
We can take this up next month if you want.
So we should have more, I think what I'm saying correct. And it will get worked through
Okay.
in the coming days and weeks.
Okay.
Thank you for the question. It's, obviously we are all concerned. Okay. Did you, Member Hammer, anything else to say?
No, just, well, I guess the only thing to add to what Director Pennant said is that, this first round that we're looking at, that all departments were directed to do, is we started by looking at the vacant positions who were oldest, that were oldest, so that have been vacant for quite a while. So as she said, like, probably no direct impact on the planning for mental health implementation.
Okay, so just again, sort of the caveat here is we are still finalizing slides. Actually, my colleague Yvonne are finalizing slides. So happy. And I like the small font here. So next slide sort of gives you the non-finality of it. Next slide.
Bigger font.
Okay, so our goal for this hearing, and I feel like this is something that we've been trying to do with and for you as well. I know that it is iterative and we really appreciate your friendly and sometimes pushy in a good way feedback for our work and our ability to explain clearly as possible what we do. We have been working and workshopping a vision and mission. You have seen versions of this. Our vision across behavioral health is for all San Franciscans to experience mental and emotional well-being and be able to participate meaningfully in community across lifespans and generations. To accomplish that, our mission is to provide equitable, effective substance use and mental health care and promote behavioral health and wellness among all San Franciscans. Our main tactics are to expand what we are calling here critical services, improve access to mental health and substance use care, and increase public awareness about where and how to get help. Next slide. Our budget obviously informs what we do, and this is our budget from that ended last fiscal year 22-23. Of note, more about 3/4 is non-general fund. This is again, in particularly as we're thinking about conveying this for the Board of Supervisors, but starting from the right side of the screen.
Oh, can I just ask, I'm sorry. Is that because it's primarily Prop C?
No.
15%.
So if you
Oh, it's
look
in
on the,
there. I'm sorry.
Uh,
Look at the slides. Thank you.
this is good. I could cut to the chase more quickly. So on the right side, what you'll see, I think from this group's lens in yellow, that Prop C funding comprises about 15% of behavioral health budget. an additional in green county and general funds comprises about 26% of the budget. The remaining budget items are primarily from the state in a variety of revenue or funding streams, including Medi-Cal to the tune of about 22%. That's in gray. In orange, the Mental Health Services Act, which is about $77 million. And in blue, a bucket of state funding called, that is primarily what is called realignment dollars that the state contributes back to the counties. A small proportion of our funding is from grants, both federal and otherwise. On the left side of the slide and the other pie chart is, again, starting with this group, is about 87 million is spent. You can see that that's exactly the same as the funding source in mental health SF related expenses. That's $87 million. That in yellow, just to be clear, is pretty much all going to adults. Some of it is going to transitional age youth, so that the next two buckets going clockwise is about 314 million, goes to adult mental health services. And then in gray, about nearly 100 million goes to substance use disorder services. Now, I will say as a caveat that on the mental health funded side and in the Prop C side, there is money going to treat and work with people with substance use disorders. And conversely, on the SUD treatment side, there is work going to take care of folks' mental health who might be enrolled in substance use treatment. So these categories are to some extent. And then the smallest proportion of our expenditures goes to children's mental health. That's about $100 million. Of note, this does not also include all the funding of the department that may be caring for people with mild to moderate mental health or less so on the substance use side, which might be happening, for example, in Dr. Hammer's area in primary care. So this really represents what we are spending and where our funding is for moderate to severe behavioral health concerns. Next slide. The other context, and I know many of you really know this, is that we deliver these services in a state context, state and federal context. We are primarily charged with serving San Francisco residents with low incomes through Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal provides coverage, as I was just saying, for mild, moderate, and serious mental health and substance use disorders. As mandated by the state, we, behavioral health entity, is responsible to meet the needs of people with moderate to severe behavioral health disorders. And in contract with the State Department of Healthcare Services, San Francisco Behavioral Health Services is considered an insurance plan, a Medi-Cal insurance plan, responsible for providing, again, the language is specialty behavioral health services for Medi-Cal beneficiaries. Under state regulation, the care of people with mild to moderate mental health concerns is both managed by and paid for by the physical or the mainstream managed care plan in San Francisco. That is the San Francisco Health Plan, who covers about 85% of Medi-Cal beneficiaries. Additional managed care plans are Anthem and most recently a number of covered lives by Kaiser. Additionally, the state funds and directs the Mental Health Services Act. Mental Health Services Act funding, which you saw in the previous slide, comes with a lot of direction about what and how we fund. More than half of Mental Health Services Act funding goes to support our most intensive services, including something called full service partnership, but also is what enables us to fund prevention and early intervention services. Next slide. Yeah. So overall, big picture, we are the largest, we meaning DPH plus all of the community-based organizations we contract with, are the largest provider of behavioral health prevention, early intervention, and treatment services. Within behavioral health, we have more than 760 civil service staff and more than 80 contracted community partners. In that domain, we offer or provide more than 100,000 connections. What we're calling here is connections. These are lower threshold services where we don't always have the person's name or other identifiers, ranging from prevention, like in a classroom, to a street contact. We know that we serve approximately 21,000 people for, again, the moderate to severe part of this bucket in one of our treatment programs. On the right, you can see our top 5 most frequent primary diagnoses. And I think just for this group, this includes as a top diagnosis, depression or mood disorder. I think for many lay people, we don't think of depression as part of the bucket of serious mental illness, but as likely many of you know firsthand or from, your expert knowledge, severe depression is considered a serious mental illness and can be quite impairing. Obviously, we also treat substance use disorders, schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders, PTSD, and severe, what we call stress reaction and anxiety disorders. So these are our top 5 diagnoses among people in care with us. Next slide.
Most of our folks with personality disorders are co-diagnosed with mood disorders.
I think that is a great point. Thank you. Here on this slide, we are aiming to describe the range of services in a little bit more specificity and about how many people we serve in each of these categories. So on the left, you can see prevention, again, this 100,000 plus contacts per year. In the crisis domain, we have a range of kinds of services that include mobile crisis, street crisis response, crisis stabilization, and urgent care, with estimates of contacts per year. Again, these are estimates based on last fiscal year, which ended in June. We have a bucket that we're describing as access and navigation services, which we are defining as services that help people get into and stay in care. The language that we've been, using a lot are case management or care management services. These also include the services that we are providing through the Behavioral Health Access Center or BHAC, and you can see the estimates of people we are working with there. Next on the right is outpatient treatment, and here I'll just note that we're including both the services that we deliver both in primary care and specialized care settings. So we sort of wanted, for the purposes of describing numbers that we are touching or treating, to open the door a little bit wider. So in primary care, we estimate, in DPH run primary care, we estimate we treat approximately 25,000 people for either a substance use or mental health disorder. On the mental health side, this is mostly people with mild to moderate illness. On the substance use side,
the range is slightly broader and of interest. This is not something that is paid for by the mainstream health plan, but not separated in quite the same way that it is on the mental health side. We also estimate, again, for this group and for Prop C, that we care for about 5,000 people experiencing homelessness in one of our systems of care.
So is that within that 25,000?
No,
or
that is
in
like,
addition to?
it is overlapping, to some extent overlapping with, for example, in whole person integrated care, which is again in our ambulatory care section, but also includes the many people treated within behavioral health. We try to also deduplicate, so if they're getting care both in whole person integrated care and, for example, in one of our substance use treatment programs, we're aiming not to count them twice.
For the outpatient care, I wonder if this would be helpful. I think you say 25,000 people. Is that 25,000 individuals?
Yes.
Okay. And without regard to number of encounters?
Nope.
Okay.
And when I say we're very purposefully in this
Yeah.
slide presentation saying contacts or visits or encounters when we are counting
Yeah.
the visit or the episode. So on the left, you can see we call it contacts.
The reason I ask this, it might be helpful to have data on encounters. So or visits, however you want to describe it, because that gives you a better idea of what the volume is.
Great.
25,000 people could be one visit
Yes.
as opposed to multiple visits.
Yes.
The demand probably would be helpful to have
Yes.
this data.
It's so interesting because I feel like I'm always pushing the team
Yeah.
to say people and not visits, because I really want to know also
I agree with you.
how many people,
Yeah.
and I hear what you're also saying.
Yeah.
And then finally, on the right is the category, let me say one more about outpatient treatment. And we have about 15,000 people in what we are calling specialized outpatient programs. These are our services in the outpatient setting for behavioral health. This includes both our mental health clinics as well as our what we have been talking about here quite a bit, our intensive case management or full service partnership. And then finally, on the right hand of the slide is what we are calling residential care, treatment and support. This is defined as long-term care in a residential setting, including, we include here transitional housing for people who need support that behavioral health is managing in some way. We have approximately 25,000 beds or spaces. We estimate that we see in that part of our system between 5,000 and 7,000 people per year. This is an area where we need to have more data specificity. We have quite a bit for our treatment program, but some of the transitional housing supports are not as well integrated into our data systems. Next slide. So this is also an area that I feel like we all have been discussing. And so this is a representation to try to get at what we have said, both to this group and publicly, as clearly as we can. There are many routes into the behavioral health system of care, both via self-referral, via organizational referral, via our access center or our phone line, and then additionally through contacts with our street teams and or involuntary psychiatric holds. So there are many routes in, and we are trying to expand our ability to get folks in, not restrain it. Next slide.
You should know we went through the next 3 slides.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys want to move.
Oh, skip
Yeah.
this one
That's the
too.
next, no, this is the next one. So this is great.
Go back one, Kaylee.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
So I think as this group knows, we are really aiming to support people from getting from care and treatment to wellness and recovery. That is our North Star. Various interventions, which we've spoken about, allow us to be responsive to a wide range of behavioral health needs. Sorry, this sort of follows on the scenarios. We do this in part through the Office of Coordinated Care, and it feels, and I hope we've been able to communicate it to this group, transformational in what we have been able to provide to people. We are still, as you all know, working on staffing, and we still know that staffing is imperfect. But with this office, we are really able and aiming to support access to and navigation between services, between transitions of interventions or services, and to coordinate care for among the folks in highest need who have not been sufficiently glued to a particular service, whether it's an inpatient, outpatient, or otherwise kind of clinic. All right, I feel like I've said all this pretty much. So let's skip this. I think there's been like lots of conversation, I know, with this group around SCRT, particularly around the transition time. This slide really describes our current state and where we think we're going. We see street response as a critical part of what we do in behavioral health and in DPH, particularly with our colleagues in whole person integrated care. We now have the following strategies and organizational approaches. One is our neighborhood-based behavioral health care team, Best Neighborhoods. Best Neighborhoods is part of the Office of Coordinated Care, so it's not a separate thing, and there's a lot of communication. That team still is working on still some staffing issues, but we have regular and priority engagements with people in specific neighborhoods and then can deploy out to other neighborhoods as needed. We are working very closely with our colleagues in our SORT and POET teams, where there is an emergency response followed by follow-up after a non-fatal overdose with the very targeted goal of reducing overdose risk. We also collaborate very closely with our street medicine colleagues, working to serve people experiencing homelessness, both with and without behavioral health conditions. And we invest and in behavioral health coordinate care and approaches to those folks closely. Next slide. Okay, I think I have 3 more minutes. I want to show you where we're at with with our mapping. And this is, these are maps. And I'm going to show you 3 of them. So this first map is a map of primary care clinics that are offering behavioral health services. Again, reflecting on the earlier part of the presentation. These are sites across the city, primarily offering treatment for mental health conditions for people with mild to moderate mental health conditions and or substance use challenges. Next slide. We contract or directly provide behavioral health services at 55 different outpatient programs across the city. You can see these mapped in a crowded fashion on this slide. We have been working on this a long time. I know this should seem like we should not be working on this a long time, but here we have it. You can see that this reflects really clinics of both larger and smaller scale. Some of them are general clinics, some of them are population-focused clinics, some of them care for adults, some of them care for children. we estimate that these altogether served about 15,000 unique people. I think to Steve's point earlier, we don't represent total number of visits here, but unique people, and that is something that maybe that would be great to work toward. Another thing to say is that most of these operate business hours. These are not, there's not a lot of extended or weekend hours amongst these programs. I think that is something that we want to be working on. We have some exceptions. You can see that on the lower left. The clinics here in this building all have weekend hours or evening hours at this point. Our Market Street methadone program also has evening hours, and we are working to find ways to improve upon that going forward.
I assume all of these three slides, I mean, I know there's one more coming. These are all providers that department contracts with.
Yeah.
So it doesn't include non-contracting
No.
providers.
No.
Okay, that's all.
Yes,
Okay.
this is,
Well, the primary care slide is not contracted. None of that is contracted. It's all civil service.
Yeah, so.
right, I think,
And as well as some of the.
is that what you, and sorry if I misunderstood.
Oh, my question was, are these all on the slides? There are three. I know there's one to come, but are
There is one more, the last ones are.
But on this one, there's some that are not contracted.
Okay.
I mean,
These are both directly
Civil service
run or
and-
civil service and contracted.
okay?
On the primary care slide, it's all directly run.
All the primary.
All the primary
These are all
care,
your clinics. Okay.
yes.
yeah, and they're all the behavioral health is provided by DPA
Yeah.
employees.
And then,
I mean, it might be helpful at some point to get a bigger picture of what's not, of providers that are not included.
yes,
But that's besides this point right now.
yes.
Okay.
Now, the ones that are not in contract and are, or not appearing on any of these slides, this is not true for primary care, but for behavioral health
Mhm.
are not Medi-Cal providing behavioral health entities.
Unless they're the private provider network.
Unless, yes.
Okay.
Which is top.
Yeah.
Small.
Okay.
Okay, last of the mapping slides is our, a depiction of our residential treatment and care programs. You can see these are also scattered around the city. I think what's extremely important to note is of the approximately 2,500, we also contract for approximately, in this slide, exactly, I think we should round that, 469 out of county beds. The reason for that is because these are cases where we've not been able to find in-county services or purchase them in-county. Next slide.
So are those principally LSATs or?
These are a variety. These include LSATs. These include our residential care for the elderly, RCFE.
What's ELSA?
LSAT is locked subacute treatment program. These also can include a couple of lower threshold respite-like programs, not very many. Hummingbird, Soma Rise, alcohol sobering. So anything with overnight capacity is on that slide.
Or did you mean the ones that are out of county?
Yeah, I was asking what's out of county.
Oh, out of county is, sorry, my,
There are some RCFEs, there are
Yes.
LSATs,
and board and care.
or in regular RCF. Okay.
This group knows this. This is really a slide that is trying to communicate to the public and to the board that treatment is more than beds. For example, most people with mental health conditions can stabilize in outpatient care. And it is often lack of stable housing that brings people experiencing homelessness into residential care. And there are some number of people for whom, if we were able to stabilize their housing needs, we could provide sufficient care on an outpatient basis. I think also, as you all know, residential care is costly and primarily relies on local funds. It is often not reimbursed by Medi-Cal due to federal and state regulations. I think I'm looking at Member Fields here, who will be able to know much more than I do about this, but I think that's kind of top line. And then I think importantly, people needing, we will never be able to move the needle with only residential care, that folks exiting residential care need access to ongoing care to prevent a revolving door of crisis and readmission. And we need sufficient outpatient care to maintain stability and prevent future residential care. This slide is really aimed at trying to educate general public, elected officials on how we can't only focus on residential care and treatment.
Dr. Conant, could I, this is Steve, Member Fields for a minute. Could I just clarify two things about, first of all, on the previous slide, which you don't have to go back to, those beds in the 469 out of county that are IMD beds, skilled nursing that are also not reimbursed by Medi-Cal, of whatever percentage, some of the others as well as the board and care ones, but not a small percentage of the out of county beds are also all on general fund dollars or other, because they don't qualify for Medi-Cal. And then on this most recent slide, I'd like to point out the term, could we go to the next one again? This is where sometimes in the second bullet point, residential care, I assume is you're responding to the board and care programs, because residential treatment, which is in the next book, does bring down Medi-Cal to the county.
Yes.
And I didn't want that to be misunderstood.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just wanted to ask, do you keep data on, for lack of a better word, recidivism for substance use treatment in particular?
We don't have it right now in a great way.
This might be illustrative to people who I do think don't quite understand
Yeah,
how often that happens.
yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Do you by chance have it for the dual diagnosis residential treatment?
Or any of
The repeat, let me say the repeat visit rather than recidivism, just if I.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't
Visit
think of that
or,
word.
perhaps representation to PS after discharge from
From care,
DDX or from dual diagnosis. From time of dual diagnosis discharge to
to a crisis of perhaps any kind.
Yeah.
I think that's a great question.
I think looking, if you have that kind of data on any of the programs, it would be useful.
Yeah.
In part because I think there's a misconception that there are some silver bullets out there. And if you just get people into treatment, problem solved, and then move on to the next person, and just really doesn't work that way. And in terms of resources, it's important to know that it costs a lot more. It's going to take a lot more devoted staffing and funding, et cetera, to actually get people to this place of wellness.
And I think I'm wondering, Member Salinas, if that's exactly your agenda. I hear that, Member Short, yeah.
And I mean, this is like comprehensive data, right? So it'd be that coupled with what was their discharge situation? Was it back to a shelter? Was it to a stabilization unit? Was it to actual PSA? What was their type of housing situation when they exited DDX, and how then that might affect when they present once again to crisis care.
Yeah.
So it may illustrate both bullets on that bottom.
I mean, just for highlighting the powers that be, that how much also housing, all these, we can spend tons and tons of money on hospitalizations to do a diagnosis, but then if someone doesn't have a logical landing spot from there, we're really wasting, millions and millions of dollars every year on these services if the point of exit is illogical. The flow is illogical.
I just want to do a time check. I have 7 more slides and it's 11:54.
Yeah, and the other thing, just for agendizing, is y'all wanted to talk a little bit about the meeting optimization stuff, so that it's totally up to you. Either we could have Hillary finish and then do meeting optimization still, or have Hillary finish and we could do meeting optimization discussion a different way, or any of those. It's up to y'all.
I personally would prefer to have Dr. Cummins finish. Everybody else feel okay about that?
Yes.
I think that's.
Yes, fine with that.
I'll try to hurry. I'm failing. And
What you're doing is important.
and I very much appreciate the feedback. I also want to I really appreciate it. So I think as this knows, we have been trying really valiantly to try to categorize wait times for different levels of care. It has been challenging for many reasons, including that we don't have single systems of data that talk to one another. We expect this to change with Epic significantly, which is, as you guys all know, we are launching in May. So these numbers are they're not made up of, they are based in data, the best data that we can pull together. Again, in last fiscal year, we have by and large 0 or 1 day wait time for walk-in services, meaning specifically for people experiencing homelessness, to our BHAC program, to our Maria X Martinez program. We have, in general, 0 to 1 days wait time for withdrawal management, for medications for addiction treatment, for care coordination, for people waiting for residential substance use care who are transitioning from withdrawal management, crisis services, and street care services. We have between 4 days and 4 weeks wait. This is a big variation for specialized outpatient substance use disorder treatment, for board and care, for mental health residential, and for specialized outpatient mental health care. That includes both regular clinics and intensive case management. Our largest wait times include, ICM, intensive outpatient care, locked subacute beds or locked behavioral health beds, state psychiatric beds, for about which we have no control. I will just say to you all is that we have observed demand, some increases in demand for withdrawal management and residential SUD care in the last quarter. So meaning these data are from last fiscal year ending June 30th. We have observed some increases over the last couple of months. And so we are working to try to actually, for our treatment on demand hearing, to get more up-to-date data. So because these end about 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
I know we don't have time but I'm just curious, is there anybody who tries to figure out the implications of those who wait? And whether they drop off?
Yeah.
Whether they drop out?
I'm sorry, implications of those who what?
Given the days,
Thank you.
weeks to
Okay,
for waiting times.
Got it, yeah.
What are the consequences? What are the implications of that? And we don't, just.
Yeah. Let me say, I think that is probably the most important question we should be asking. We are tracking that for people waiting for intensive outpatient care or intensive case management. We are in particular. And I can tell you that for lock beds, mostly people who are waiting are in a hospital. But that is why we want no wait times, because we know that waiting risks other adverse consequences.
Some I would assume are in jail as well, correct?
Or in jail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's really bad.
The state hospital wait right now is 2 years. And folks can't actually stay in the inpatient for that long. So
So there are some.
for 2 years,
Mhm.
really? Like, out of none of our folks, they do get discharged because, I mean, and so that varying things can happen in that time.
Yes.
Typically, the folks that are waiting for state psychiatric beds are not ending up in the inpatient for.
So it's a very good
And the flip side of that was I forget where I read the article, maybe it's the Cross, something else, about those who are coming out of state hospital and having a ready network where they are discharged to continue to have follow-up services, including housing, but that's another story.
One quick thing, Dr. Khanna, just to be consistent, under the 4 weeks, 4 days to 4 weeks, I think if we could refer to have the terminology straight, that board and care is a bullet, mental health residential treatment care confuses the discussion because they are different processes of getting in. And so I think when we're
Thanks,
referring
Steve.
to
I
the
appreciate that.
Medi-Cal monitored treatment programs, we should use that terminology just to make it distinct from the board and care world.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Next slide. And Ashley is sitting next to me, Steve.
Yes, as we speak.
I always take a strategic seat. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I've spoken about the Office of Coordinated Care and how central this is to our thinking and implementation. So and as you've heard from many of us, this is the mechanism, this office is, our approach is that we are aiming to ensure, however imperfectly, there are no gaps on the pathway to care so that people get engaged, remain engaged, and transitioned into care. I am using the term care here just to reflect on what Member Field just said, kind of broadly, because this is intended to be person-centered, wanting to be consonant with what the person would like. And so there is flexibility, I think appropriate flexibility about what we attempt to engage the person in. This capacity, again, under MHSF and Prop C funding, manages this in a way that we were not able to do previously as a centralized point of access for, again, priority folks. So we have, on the one hand, our access and navigation through our behavioral health access line, our behavioral health access center, now open 7 days a week. And we have a care coordination function. We are aiming to have prioritized populations that we know to be at highest risk for adverse health consequences. People leaving hospital, that includes inpatient, emergency department, psychiatric emergency services, including people with involuntary psychiatric holds, people with crisis contacts, including SCRT, pointing at Mike, people leaving jail, people experiencing homelessness, people with high utilization of multiple systems, meaning people cycling, including, I think, some of the folks that you're imagining return to PES with another crisis, and people within the homelessness and supportive housing system. Not everything is built out, I would say, to full capacity and ability to systematically track all people, but we are working to both prioritize and get to people, again, in a systematic way so we don't lose them. Next slide. I just want to comment briefly that I don't know if this is exactly the right title, but sort of the scope of work that is involuntary care for serious mental health. Again, this is a last resort not preferred, try everything first option. But we are part of our work is to thoughtfully implement and thoughtfully and compassionately implement these systems, including our 5150 work, which is now, as you all know, it's been expanded to our community paramedic colleagues. We are working very closely with them to make sure that we are doing good follow-up for these folks. Care Court, which I mentioned already. Just want to mention also our assisted outpatient treatment program. This is also called Laura's Law, which is also something that we run and see as another tool to try to pull people into care who could potentially benefit. I did not have on this slide SB 43, but that would be something to come.
Can I ask a quick question? AOT though is, I mean, while it says court ordered, it's still voluntary.
Technically, Care Court is too.
So
it's
the
Care
court
Court.
will function that way, right? It'll be, they're voluntary, even though, so you have to ought to be supervised within the context of this court.
Yes. I mean,
I'm just saying because the slide could be a little.
Yes.
I know. So I think, I mean, I'd be very welcome of like title, headlines for the slide.
Yeah.
Because it is court ordered, but the consequences are, there is latitude about consequences. I just presented this actually this week to the Behavioral Health Commission, and a member of the public commented, the court could choose to hold you in contempt if you don't adhere to the care, could theoretically put you in jail. I mean, there's some theory here that is
Right.
unlikely to happen. I've had,
Like, it's hard to call these things voluntary.
they are
Yet it
in
is
this,
also corrected technically.
How about just calling it court ordered and other involuntary care?
court ordered. We do know from, I will just say, even though with the caveats that I think member Salinas just mentioned, we know from actually evaluation work that happened in New York State for Kendra's Law, which is the name of the assisted outpatient treatment program in New York State, that it was associated with improved health outcomes. And I don't have the exact health outcomes in my mind that were measured, but that is my understanding, and others in the room will have more of this history, was part of the basis for Laura's Law here in California. So it is sort of an interesting, I don't know, liminal category of it's not fully voluntary, but it's not that the involuntary nature, coercive nature, does not have clear consequences. I guess I'll put it that way. But once you have somebody in a court before a judge, I mean, the nature of the power and the obviously relationship to the court, it's not neutral.
And I think that the studies, Dr. Cunnins, on Kendra's Law as well as Laura's Law is another important part, which is maybe the real reason for these legislation efforts to help people, was it also required an expansion of available services. So most of the outcome that didn't result in that tension between, do you arrest somebody who won't go to treatment and a community doesn't offer any, is that the mandate, and this goes with Care Court too, there's a mandate that the available range of services be credible with a involuntary mandate that someone participates. So that's probably the biggest single reason why those efforts, they actually promoted local communities to develop more programs that people would participate in voluntarily. So, and I'm hoping Care Court will do that for us.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. It's a great point. All right, next slide. I think I'm the home stretch here. Two more. This is a very busy slide. This slide is really to share with all of you that we at DPH are really aiming to take and implement a coordinated response with other city agencies and community organizations. And I will highlight the first two in particular. We are engaging in daily and weekly coordination and case conferencing with very careful confidentiality protections to aim to support people who might be encountered on the street to engage in care and move through to a more stable place in their life. We are also collaborating, I hope it feels this way, with the San Francisco Fire Department on people seen by SCRT. We are working very closely with fire to receive referrals and to do follow-up. The last 1, 2, 3, 4 bullets, and maybe we'll slim down this slide, is working on overdose prevention across city departments, including training, including supporting other departments that have overdose prevention policies. And then finally, I think our children and youth system really exemplifies what joint programming and coordination looks like. And I think we have a lot to learn from there. That section and system of care has been long doing prevention and treatment across city agencies. And again, I just want to emphasize with very careful confidentiality protections, respecting medical privacy. Next slide. I think this is it. So I think you all know most of this. A lot of this was enabled by mental health SF, including new funding that came in from Prop C. I'll call your attention to the fourth bullet. We have implemented a standardized screening tool. It'd be great to brief this group on this, to ensure to aim for timely access and coordinated care for people with Medi-Cal. This has been a requirement of CalAIM to have a standardized screening, both in the primary care side and on the specialty behavioral health side. This is a non-trivial thing to implement, and really represents better coordination between sectors of care and ability for providers to communicate clearly across sectors of care. I think the other, we are very proud, I hope you all feel that way too, that we have opened more than 350 new residential care and treatment slots. We've expanded hours of operation for BHAC, the office-based induction center here, OBIC, and opioid treatment programs. We've amplified our distribution of naloxone. We've implemented our Office of OCC, Office of Care Coordination. These are really big accomplishments. We are in the process of adding money to our ICM providers. That has been in the works for some time. I know that it is a long time coming. Next slide. Why don't we skip this? I feel like we've said all this. I just want to highlight 3 things that continue to be, I see as our main challenges. Among our main challenges is workforce recruitment and retention. We've heard a lot from Member Salinas. I know this from many other providers. We have more money on the street at this point than staffed spots, meaning agencies have more money and their service reach is limited by their staffing. I think that is really our collective challenge. I'm going to say this a little more bluntly to you all than I will say in public. We are slow to acquire new residential care and treatment spots. Our methods of procurement and like finding new places and making that go forward is slower than the problem. We are exploring as a department ways we might do that more quickly and are working through actually potential changes in city procedures. And I will, like, once this is clearer, I will look forward to coming back and talking more to you all. And then finally, I know you all ask us for data and I asked for data. And I just want to share that this is also has been slow because of hiring challenges, as well as legacy and historic data systems, which we're trying to bring together, trying to rationalize. I think a lot will happen, as I've said over and over again, with Epic, but this has limited our ability to see and measure and make changes as we go.
I have a quick comment or drink.
Yes, no, go. I was just saying there was a couple, so.
First of all, this has been one of the best presentations you've made since I've been a member.
Thank you. Thank Ashley. Thank Ashley.
That's not a knock on past presentations, but this is the kind of presentation that anybody who joins the IWG ought to have as for their orientation.
Right.
Because if you're not part of the system, and I'm not part of the system, if you others are part of the system, this is really, really helpful.
Great.
One thing at the end is, and I don't know where it fits, you've got some things in the pipeline. And I don't know whether it would be helpful to identify, you've got the crisis stabilization unit in the pipeline. I guess you've got the mental health service center in the pipeline still, maybe other beds, things that
What's
are
coming.
And that may be helpful to your slide, but this was a really, really helpful.
Thank you. I
presentation.
appreciate that. We worked hard. Ashley we all worked hard.
Yeah, it's been almost like, some of this has been a year and a half of making.
It's getting colder.
I'm all
Never seen.
So I was gonna say, so in the slide, I'm trying to remember the slides, because I didn't have a chance to print them out this time. But the one time I didn't get a chance to print out the slide, the most like, but with the care courts, I think, there was an estimate of potentially 1,000 to 2,000.
Yeah. Eligible.
So these are folks that are not currently engaged in care. And so it is an addition of quite a number of folks. And so I think just wondering, when we might be able to get details of how BHS anticipates meeting these new demands. Because I think, we're having so many difficulties as it is meeting the demands across the system of care currently for our clients.
I think we don't think that many will come to the care court. And so we made that estimate very early on, actually. I'm looking at Annie, using estimates number of people. And care court, if everyone remembers, is a pretty narrow eligibility criteria. People with a psychotic disorder or other schizophrenic spectrum disorder. And it does not include people, for example, who might have a substance use induced psychosis. So of those, so I think our big concern and question is how we will incorporate the demand, and will it really be the population estimate of between 1,000 and 2,000. We are now about 3 weeks in, 4 weeks in, 3 weeks in. We have not been, we are working through what data we can share publicly. And so we'll do that soon, but we are not seeing suddenly like 1,000 come in, just to be clear. But I think your point is well taken and is our concern as well.
And just with the data and analytics, given the challenges with hiring, Has it been considered or is it cost prohibitive to maybe contract with someone to work with whom you do have here on BHS? I mean, because there are definitely
Yeah.
grant or works out there that
Yes,
do
do this, absolutely.
for state, federal,
Yeah.
local entities.
Yeah, I was gonna just add to that, when you mentioned that as a major challenge, I think, I mean, this may be too optimistic, but I think I would mention the switch over to Epic. I think it's gonna be so much easier to collect data and you'll have so much more analytic support when that happens. So I mean, I think it's sort of, you know, wait and see what happens after you have the Epic data.
There might be a more concise ask even for a contractor if you've already had the data.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have worked with contractors on some issues that have not always been fruitful. And so I think those 2 points are really well taken. I mean, we do all anticipate much more capacity with the Epic transition. The department has expertise in Epic analytics. It's a much larger team. There's an ability and interest to write the kind of reports that will enable us to do the tracking and management that we would like to. And I think your other point is well taken, where we have a specific, you know, thinking more broadly about what else we can perhaps purchase through contract rather than rely on in-house. Yeah.
I had one other just piece of feedback. I agree that the slides are really excellent. Your presentation's great, Valerie. But just thinking about your audience and how much mental health San Francisco is going to be a top priority to your audience is really thinking about how you can weave this thread a little bit more explicitly through your presentation of really high, I was like thinking like, green highlights or arrows that point to each of these things are mental health SF interventions, or just in your presentation to highlight them. But going back to our discussion earlier, it's important for people to see where mental health SF interventions are embedded in the system of care and are new in these last 3 years. So I would just
Thanks for that.
Especially in the scenario slides, I think there's some opportunities to do that there in the maps.
One last question. Do you find that qualifying clients for Medi-Cal or third-party payment is a key challenge and impact?
That is a great question.
You can cogitate on it if you want.
There is one part of the question which I'll mention, which the upfront is, to my knowledge, not an issue. There in California, as you likely know, your Medi-Cal resides with the county.
Yep.
And the inter-county transfers take a very long time. Like 4 to 6 months.
Yeah.
That is a problem.
If it's significant, it may be something may want to add.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
You survived.
I really appreciate this group very much. I appreciate that it's a good presentation. We have some more work to do, but I also really have such a strong interest in being as clear as we can. And as we're communicating out beyond all of you, and to try to describe both, hopefully what will feel like some accomplishments, but also the challenge.
So this is a draft
Yes,
and you're going to be presenting it, is it later this week?
Friday.
Okay. If there are changes, looking up Jen, can we
Yes,
get
yeah.
the final slide?
Yes.
So we can see, the final slide.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is a tremendous resource.
Yeah, happy to.
I think for us.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for letting me suck up so much of the meeting.
Going good.
Gonna run.
So we can move now to
Yeah, I thought you were just gonna
Okay.
take it from there. So,
Oh, yeah.
let's, yeah.
public comments. On discussion item 5, which was the director's report, there's nobody public here in person. So looking to those of you who are joining online, if you would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand, your virtual hand, and we will unmute you. You will have 2 minutes to make your public comment. Going to refresh to see if we have any raised hands. I don't see any. Excuse me, I don't see any raised hands. That was riveting. So I suggest that we close public comment on the director's update. Okay, do that. So then we could, this is the agenda question for you all. We could go back to the agenda item that we skipped, which was the meeting optimization report. We also have the agendizing for the next couple meetings, which regardless of what we do, we should do that. And then we have the public comment for other things that are.
I'd say let's go back to the meeting optimization. We know what,
It's slide 40,
40.
40.
As it starts on slide 39. So just so we're clear, so we want to do, so that's about 15 minutes, that discussion and stuff. So is that what we're, just want to make sure that that's what we're doing?
And we
I believe so.
there is a hard stop at 1 because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
we need the room for exec at 1.
Yeah, I think so. I think 15 on that and then 15 on the agenda setting.
You don't have to, well, you don't barely have 2 15s. Okay.
Is that clock wrong?
No, it's on time. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, so then we're on slide, yes, that is the correct slide, and I believe this is you actually.
Yes, sorry, let me find my notes.
Slide 39. We could also defer the meeting optimization to next month.
We could, but I'd sort of rather
Rather
just
now.
do it.
All right.
Someone should start talking about meeting
It's me,
optimization.
sorry.
Right. So I'm speaking on the behalf of Valerie, who ran the group. Group continued to discuss regular challenges for the IWG and DPH have raised, including where we meet, how the meeting is structured, and the content of those presentations. The participants did not feel a new meeting location was a high priority concern, but other members have previously expressed that concern. Do we want to take a minute to discuss some of the trade-offs? For example, 1380 is where some of our services are delivered and where our team is mostly housed, including Hillary. So it allows any people who are representing the department to come in and out, and people are actually more likely to attend in person since we are in the same building. We know, though, that it's not a very accessible location. Like Diana said this morning, she had to walk here from the Muni. I have to walk here when I come in on the Muni. Other available locations may be more accessible, but the challenge of needing to escort folks may still be a challenge, just like it is here. And then again, moving to video will likely increase video participation from staff, BHS staff, and reduce the availability to join in. That would likely include Hillary because she's usually in back to front meetings. So I just wanted to open that up for any discussion that we have around those trade-offs.
I think I was one of the first people that kind of brought up about the challenges of this location. I think one, the accessibility, and then actually in the beginning, I think we had a lot more participants from the community. And so I think that right now we dwindle to nothing, and even online. So I'm and parking is really horrible, and transportation wise, really horrible. So I think there was one recommendation that was there's availability in the general hospital as far as escorting problem. There's no escorting party if you guys were to use the BAC. That's a BAC. We just enter, and then you have direct link after being let in, of course, then, in down to the main conference room. That's one. But if not, then there's a next door in the main house that there can be rooms that are available, conference room. I understand that, we're probably going to be missing Hillary, for doing a lot of the live presentations. So I think it's also important to have community involvement as well. Just kind of let the community also voice some of their perspectives, concerns. I understand we can't engage, we can respond, but I think it's important to hear the community perspective as well. That's my take.
Stand up this time.
Oh, I thought you said, someone had their hand.
Oh, no, I was trying to see if anyone did.
Meetings at 3 different places here, 333 Valencia City Hall. And then the member one is in the idea of the hospital. We just, somebody make a motion for where they think the best location is.
Well, I am still, oh, I guess that could include this. Yeah, I'm just saying, I still am not convinced that we need to make any change personally. I think, yeah, there are pros and cons. But the sort of raised concerns about this location don't seem, large enough or broadly felt enough to make it worth reevaluating where we meet. That's my opinion. Totally open if a bunch of other people, I don't want anybody to be inconvenienced, and access is important, so that's where I
mean, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I think that perhaps the decrease in the public participation maybe has little to do with the venue versus the content and a loss of interest in the IWG. I think, because when we had the highest participation, it was when we were completely remote, right? Those were and so was that when the IWG first, started and people had a lot of interest and a lot of hope, I guess I would say, but a lot of interest and hope, and that has dwindled over time for various reasons. So while we are still here committed, I think you also see that that's why we can't get the seats filled, right? There's a lot less interest and investment in the IWG, and I don't know that was going to change with the venue, because that's something else. And I think if other things start to happen in the IWG, where people start to think it's actually relevant again, then we will see higher participation, regardless of, I think, where we are, because people always have the option to do remote.
And I would say, piggybacking on that, if that's really a concern of ours and we really want to encourage or boost community participation, there are probably better ways to do it, including just sort of promoting and educating folks about the opportunity to participate, because I think in reality, most folks don't even know how they can, that they can attend, or how they can attend, or even the details of where and when and all of that. And so maybe if we do stay here, maybe that's something we could kind of do, to bring people back or get more people, if that's a priority for us. I don't know that it is.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, just because the location of the hospital is such a high transport type of, a lot of people, not only on foot, but then on bus, then cars, then people going to the hospital. I mean, it just patients, care providers, it's just a lot of what we are actually talking about. And, that's just my own thing, so. But I hear both of your,
And maybe part of that, whatever marketing or, is making it clear people can participate remotely as well.
and we were having a lot of difficulties even
Oh,
from the
with-
start. Oh my God, people were
Attack you.
complaining and say,
Right,
I can't, yeah, now it's good. But in the beginning, and that was discouraging to people say, hey, I can't get on, and you're supposed to, and I hear one,
Couldn't get the public comment.
yeah, it was, yeah, so.
I want to preface, I do think we're relevant. I think that some folks might not think so anymore, or their expectations are different. Was at the initiation of this, so.
Okay, so I want to remind people, so we're talking also about these other two, not just the location. So did you want to, was there more?
Yeah, there's a little bit more.
Unless anybody's dying to chime in about meeting location. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so Valerie had a proposal from the discussion group that she wanted to share to see if we can reach an agreement to try it out for the next few months. What it would look like is from November through January, an hour round robin update and Q&A, which can be replaced with special presentations as needed. That would include 5-minute updates per department or person, just like our internal Monday meetings at BHS. Round robin updates may not always be presented by the department representative, especially if they're joining later on in the meeting, but may be presented by Hillary or Valerie instead. And then any IWG identified topics, IWG will submit the questions and suggestions in advance so that we can prepare information. And this would be approximately an hour and would depend on topics raised. Staffing and responses from the DPH team members could be challenging, but we could try it out. And that's actually how we do some of our other community meetings, how they're run. So that format is very familiar to us internally. And then the special presentations as needed could be something like staffing and wages, and then we would reduce round robin time for that. And that's the general proposal for the meeting structure.
Yeah, Valerie mentioned it's part of her proposal that the department would like to minimize, to the extent possible, the formal presentations. Put aside the director, but the formal presentations because of the amount of time it takes to prepare those presentations, and see if we could maybe do something a little differently.
And the other thing, in addition to them being very formal, is that you've all expressed you want more time to interact and discuss. And so if it's less of a formal presentation, then it's more time for the discussion part. too.
Yeah. So for example, like for some of the other meetings, instead of actually putting together decks, people are armed with talking points and it's more of a conversation than really a presentation or talking.
Yeah.
I think that would be efficient.
One thing that limits this, and is that we don't get the slide deck until the night before the meeting.
Yeah.
And we could probably save, I realize the public doesn't get them, but that it would save us a lot of time if we had, even if it was even if it was parts of the meeting, those that have a lot of background information, to get that in advance so that we don't have to read through every slide.
But then that kind of doesn't address the point of, it takes a long time to put the slides together, and that's part of the limiting
But if there's
factor on the
but if
DPH.
there's background material,
Yeah, maybe it's.
Right, so yeah,
it'd
maybe
be
it's
helpful to
explained
get
the
it
slide.
earlier than later.
Yeah.
Because I think we spend a lot of time when there are presentations going through background information.
Yeah,
Could-
sometimes background information takes a little bit.
Right.
I don't think so.
No, but it takes a long time for them to put together, so that doesn't
I
address
fully
that.
Not the
understand.
subject matter expert, so it's either Valerie or I. who
Right.
hold the-
But I think we lose a lot of time where there is a presentation.
Yeah,
basically reading through slides that we could have read
Yeah.
before the meeting.
Yeah, and maybe for more formal or longer in-depth presentations, background and context can be sent ahead of
Yeah.
time.
Okay.
So how does this proposal generally sit with everyone? The blue here, change our format this way. Everyone feel strongly either way about it?
So it'd be for 3 meetings and then we can assess how it's going.
Yeah, then probably like at the end of the meetings, we just do like a quick kind of plus minus delta in each of those 3. So
I don't know that I would do that each. I mean, I think more so, let's go 3 and.
Okay.
Go ahead. No.
That's good.
So does anybody object to? I don't know if we have to do a formal vote or whatever to. Okay,
I think so.
all right.
Yeah.
So nobody's gonna, yeah, nobody's gonna raise hell if we, don't. So that's what matters. Okay. Heck, sorry, I meant
A
heck.
bit more.
Yeah.
Okay, you wanna, yeah.
Yeah, I can provide some more background on this. So there are a few suggestions from discussion group participants about who they would like to hear from for future meetings. We are suggesting that IWG submit questions, a topic, or questions and topics a week after the previous meeting for potential discussion at the next meeting. So for example, a week by the end of next week or by next Tuesday, have those questions submitted. And then depending on the number of topics raised, the types of topics raised, some questions could be deferred to subsequent meetings, but we can have like a process where we can communicate what topics get deferred to other meetings and which ones will be discussed and agendized for the upcoming meeting.
I understood it as that also, you know, at the end of each meeting, we would throw out our ideas for agenda items as well, right?
That's
I'm
the
just
next-
saying then there's a,
That's the next slide.
oh,
Yeah, just within, yeah, so
Okay.
it's just within the, like the deadline, I guess, would be right, within that week.
yeah. But you'd be able to do it both ways. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And then I think Jen's taking over the next slide.
So this will be slide 43.
Yes. So our next meeting is going to be on November 28th, and the topics that we identified as potential November topics are here, as well as some upcoming topics of consideration. I just wanted to note that one of the things that when we met and talked about just the progress report is like this agendizing issue came up, and like how much control the IWG has over these agendas. So I just wanted to just confirm and invite, this is the place where we will do those adaptations. So what you see on your screen are the things that we see or DPH sees as incoming issues of importance and things that would be options. And this would be the opportunity for you as the IWG to say, yeah, this is where we want to stay, or there are other things to put on the agenda. So this is the active part of the agenda creation. So the things that we identified as potential topics for our November meeting are, we may have community engagement. There are a couple of time sensitive things that we will need to do. So community engagement is one of them to keep that going. The
Can you
progress.
explain,
Mhm.
sorry, can you remind me what is meant by that?
That's Deborah who presented today
Oh,
at that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Got it.
Yep. So community engagement is pardon me, is underway. We want to keep that moving so that we can get into so that Interethnica can get into the field and do that work. The progress report is another thing that is a absolute necessity, because that also is something that has a deadline associated with it. There are 3 other things though on the November topics that have come back that would be potentials. So one is fire. So thank you, Chair Short for having this letter go formally to request them to attend an IWG and to provide an update on what's happening with SCIRT. They've confirmed that they are able to come and that they have time on November 28th. So I would recommend that you accept that invitation because it's hard to schedule people. And
Oh,
it's
I
something that you've been
believe I
looking
did.
for.
Yeah.
I believe I did.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, you did. She's just saying like
It's
to the group.
Oh,
This might happen, so.
okay,
Yeah, you
gotcha.
just-
Thank you, Diana. Yeah, and then there's. yeah,
Sorry,
there's a
I
couple
would
of-
second that we did already decide we wanted that report from them, and then we invited them, so I sort of feel like that's a
Yeah.
we have to
Okay.
do that.
Thank you,
Do you know
thank
who's
you.
gonna make
And there's
the
two
report?
other things that are
Jen,
coming
Jen?
up. So
Good question.
That one
Is
is
there a
Simon
comment?
paying
Do you
it.
know who's gonna make the report?
That's Simon paying at the fire department for that one,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
for SCIRT team.
okay.
Sorry, Jen. Oh, she's froze.
There's a,
We answered the question and then you froze, so I think
Yeah.
you're good to go on.
You're unfrozen.
oh, you did, okay. So if there are questions related to I think the plan right now, and so correct me if I'm wrong, the plan right now is that they are going to come and give their own update. If there are specific questions that you want to have addressed, it's probably good to provide that kind of preparation for them so they can come and answer those questions.
Good,
So-
good point. Could people just forward those to me and then,
Or do you want to have a discussion?
no, I don't want to have a discussion. If people have questions they want to make sure, could we give them ahead of time?
Okay.
If you don't mind.
All right.
Okay, so we will include that as part of our post-meeting communication, as we will give a due date for you to have any questions submitted. And Sarah, we're happy to also support you in that if you want us to kind of, just let us know if you want us to coordinate, bringing all the questions together and then you can submit them or whatever works for you.
Okay, thanks.
There are two other things that are coming up. Soma Rise has a preliminary evaluation done, and so they can report back on that. And so that kind of goes with what we were talking about is the evaluative role of this group. There is a report that is now done, and so they can bring that back, and they are ready to bring that back. And we've also been waiting on the staffing and wages study. So that should be also something that can happen as well. So we agreed,
Jen,
community engagement,
Jen, I
fire,
have
and
a
progress
question.
report, but Soma and staffing and wages, I wonder if those are a priority for you.
Go ahead with the
Okay. Who's gonna make the Soma Rise report? Is it
David
gonna be
Pading.
department Or,
David Payton.
Hey,
Should someone from Soma Rise be here?
Right, 360. Would there be any problem?
I'm just-
reason not to invite them?
I mean,
I think that's
maybe
a great idea.
the corollary of that is there a value to having someone from Soma Rise participating in this?
I think in terms of questions we might have.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think, maybe it would be a way we get to see Vika again.
so just a note
Highly
of,
improbable.
a note of just helpful to know is a team of ours at Harder and Company actually did that report. And so I just wanted to be clear, is we will be also in the room. And so we could have the people that really supported that report, because we provided, that was a nice interconnectivity between us. We can invite Health Right 360 to come. It wouldn't be Vitka because she's not involved in that project, but it would be involved with the people that are closest to it. They've been involved in the evaluation the whole way through and have been part of that learning process. So we can extend that to them.
I thought one of the things that was very helpful for those of us who did the site visit was having a chance to talk to people who are actually working in
I
Soma
agree.
Rise. That's why. That's why I
I
asked.
totally agree with you, Steve.
So I think
Yeah.
Jen is looking for confirmation on.
So can I say, I think that's two different things.
Yeah.
The summarize, we either do summarize or staffing, one or the other. So I think we should determine who's available, but we can't do all of those things. So
Right.
it has to only be different things.
And it may be that that there's no new data or information on the staffing and wages report, even though, I think it's gonna appear as an absolute priority for anything we want to do to support any expansion or development of services. So I don't want to take it off their purview, but there may not be a report that's different than the last one we had ready. Because
So when and how would we know that?
we
Like,
could,
would
well,
we hang out and see what the answer is to that and then get some horizon there if they can't do it yet?
Yeah, we can do that.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so is everybody okay with that?
December might
priority-
be a better time for them.
Yeah, so I'm hearing, but priority would be like, is that right? It's like unless staffing and wages has something like critical and time sensitive and new to provide, is like, we'll go with Summarize.
Yeah, that
Assuming,
sounds good.
and if
Perfect.
Summarize is not
that.
available to attend, then we'll go with staffing and wages.
Yes.
Don't tell
Could
them
I
that.
raise something in terms of both of these things, which we just spent I thought, a very fruitful time this morning talking about how we want to change the orientation of how we're working with the department in terms of system of care and, the integration of and expansion of services. Should we not, to me, I'm thinking, because now again, we're being very specific. We got a skirt thing, we got a SOMA, we're still dealing with individual elements with important things to tell us, but should we have an ongoing agenda item that the department comes to us and tells us what plans are in development? Because we can't wait month to month. They're going to have to move on stuff. So I think we should get used to someone from the department coming into the IWG, separate of Dr. Cunnen's report, and saying, hey, we got an opportunity to do this on a youth program. Here's what we're working on. Here's the stage of development it's at. What issues might you have? So we're used to talking to the department, but don't wait until you bought a building or you already have a commitment or something before you let us know the stage of development. Because number one, we don't want to slow everything down, but we also want to get used to them feeling like part of the process of getting a successful program up and running one way or the other is to inform the IWG as soon as possible and talk to them and let them know this is in process.
Yeah.
That's part of the round robin.
I was gonna say, couldn't that fit within the round robin?
As long as that's the information that they use
And I
as
was
a
gonna say,
template.
I was gonna say, but we would explicitly ask that to be included. Ask for
Yeah.
that. Okay, thanks, Steve.
Can I ask, like, at what point that round robin, for the team that was working on that, the discussion group that was working on that, were you thinking that you'd be able to implement it with this next meeting? It may take a little bit of ramp up time to.
We were, because we said we were gonna do the change for the next 3 meetings in a row.
All right,
So
okay.
that was the idea.
Jennifer, when you talk to Valerie about it, I mean, it's very similar to what we do for our steering committee meeting every other week. It's quick updates, one slide. So I think
Yeah.
it's not going to be a brand new
Okay.
thing for the domain leads.
Sarah, do you participate in the agenda setting?
This is the only agenda setting. that-
Well, wait, she's the chair. She's the chair.
It's not another separate meeting that's
The chair.
agenda setting.
Well, I only just,
I know you're interested.
did, so, I haven't, other than any of this.
I mean, isn't that,
No.
Sarah mentioned.
I mean,
I do
isn't
that
being
Monique
chair part and
had.
parcel
I
of
do-
helping to set the agenda?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do believe that she had prior, to
Yeah.
me, or at least, but I
I
don't,
didn't get a clear answer on that when I asked that at the meeting.
yeah, I don't know how much it was more that she was
Yeah.
informed prior or was
I mean, and you're
suggestion.
to join any of,
Okay.
or it. Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking is you have the ability as the chair
Mhm.
and not to wait till the week before the meeting,
Okay.
but maybe like within a week or so after this meeting, to have that discussion with the folks, with Valerie and with the harder folks, to sort of scope out the agenda so that if you are looking to have certain presentation.
So you mean for the round robin part, because
Yeah,
we're.
for the
doing
round
it
robin,
here.
you can help shape that.
Okay, all right.
I mean, we can't do that as a group at every meeting.
We should wrap up.
Yeah, because we still need to do
Yeah, we
the
got
final
to.
public comment and then we have to, we get kicked out at 1.
And I have
So
a couple.
can I just say, excuse me, could I just say, like, so this is going to be a little bit of an evolving process. That's a little bit about where my question came. Like, we're going to try this next November and see if how, you know, kind of how it feels to do this first time. And then we'll reflect and see what we can do next time. I want to be very careful and conscious of Sarah's, you know, commitment to being able to come to, like, we meet every week and those meetings are open to the chair to come, but it's a lot of time. So let's give this a try this time. And maybe we could do a little bit more proactive communication with Sarah to about how it's evolving and how this, you know, is kind of coming together. And as you said, over the next, you know, 3 meetings as we'll get better at it, we'll make, we'll be able to kind of get our process down.
Okay, Dr. Hammer has some.
First, I want to apologize for Jim for calling you Steve.
That's all right.
It's like
Steve's a
10,
pretty common name around here. It's all right.
like 10, you know. Like 10, like it does.
And then I wanted to let people know that I have announced my retirement and I'm leaving the at the end of January. So I'm checking in with the mayor's office about my seat.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Gonna miss you.
Sarah, the bylaws say that you have the responsibility
Yeah. Doesn't mean you get to leave the IWG. I don't-
to
What's
oversee
retirement got
the
to do with it?
preparation and distribution of the agenda.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. We do need to wrap up though, so
Yes.
let's go to public comment.
Slide 74, Kaylee. This is public comment for other matters within the jurisdiction of the committee that were not on the agenda. I'm actually not seeing any members of the public, so I want.
Did we have to do the public comment for this discussion item first?
Milne.
Oh, did they get it?
Yes.
Okay,
I
public,
thought this was.
public
That was on a
Discussion.
field.
for the,
They just announced it, yeah.
I need to do 2 more public
I'm really
comments and then we
surprised.
can go. So if I could have a little bit of quiet for a second. So this is the public comment for the meeting optimization. And I actually, there are no public members either in person or online. So I think I would suggest that we close public comments. Okay, both of these,
Right.
but I can only suggest. Y'all have,
Okay, we're all good, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
done.
So then we are at the end and somebody needs to move to close the meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, so that was Lipton and, sorry, who seconded it?
Wait.
McGuigan? Okay. I think we're done. I don't think do we vote to leave?
No,
Okay.
no.
We would vote to-
We need another committee to,
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Where do you want me to turn around?
All right, I gotta run. I'll see you all
Yeah.
next weekend. They gave him